Welcome back to the Dynasty Grind. My name is Peter Howard at PA Howdy on Twitter, and apparently at PA Howdy FF on Threads, I guess. Nothing on Blue Sky. I don't know. I have a million new apps. I refuse to use all of them until you all pick the one we're all going to end up on together, I guess. But welcome back every Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Me, Tacit Assassin, and sometimes Dynasty Outhouse from the Dynasty Trades podcast get together to talk, answer, discuss, whatever. Dynasty fantasy football in general. So any questions, comments, or thoughts you have, drop them in whatever little comment box on whatever streaming platform you're watching us on, if you're watching us at all, in which case, I didn't like you anyway. So that we can respond to them, we try to get them in order as they come in. So sometimes that can take a while, because sometimes it gets pretty hot and heavy on the comment section, and we appreciate it. Thanks for being here. It's a consistency season, I guess. At least that's what I see mostly on my time. Who's consistent? Who's going to have the most 1,000-yard seasons by the end of their career? So let's talk about it. Thanks very much. Hey, Zach. How's it going?
Hey, not too bad. Not too bad. Peter, that was very professional, that intro. And the other thing is Mike Evans is always the answer to who will have the most 1,000-yard seasons at the end of their career.
Yep. I think Larry Fitzgerald will still beat him. To be honest.
Yeah, it's probably true.
Whether it matters or not, I guess, is a better question. The answer is no. So, there's that. I finally got my script written for Dynasty Crossroads. It was due out this morning, so I feel really productive that I finally have a first version of a script for a podcast that's already late. I'm doing well this week. How about yourself? Up to much?
You're ahead of me.
Trades going down.
No,
two drafts. That's unusual.
Haven't done very much. Russ asked me, "Hey, what'd you guys do this weekend?" And it has rained in Maine for roughly 46 days in a row. And so we did nothing. We did nothing this weekend. We watched Trolls too. But tonight, my wife and youngest son are out watching the fireworks because they were postponed from the last night. So.
Oh, that's nice. This is the first day in a while we haven't had a major thunderstorm, and it's already gathering for tonight. So I guess it's going to go back to thunderstorming and giving me anxiety about whether or not we'll experience a leak, I guess. But we did nothing for the 4th of July because everyone was asleep. We haven't slept or done much lately, but we're all here and healthy, so pretty happy with that. I see you, Henry. Thank you. Do I have many questions or comments? Yeah, again, I said it's a depth of the off-season when everyone's more interested in Scott Fishbowl or redraft, if anything else. My timeline is just resplendent on Eli slander, which is cool and fun and encouraged, and just random questions that are meant to be trying to go viral, like, would you rather this or would you rather that? Or, hey, here's my beach bod picks. Or, there's just not a lot going on in the Dynasty world. So it's a good time for roster evaluation. That's what I've been doing. I've been looking at my teams, trying to figure out what I can do, what I can't do, where my team's at, which direction I want to go in. Just trying to grind out some 2023 projections too. Drew, I see you, man. In here at 7. 12-team, half-point PPR, Superflex, no tight end premium, start 10. I have tons of wide receivers, CD Lamb, Olave. Yeah, Dynasty build. I get you. London Burks, Dotson, Johnson, Deontay. But I don't have any running back aside from JT, Henry, and Perrine. Well, for a start, with that wide receiver lineup, if you've got JT and Henry, I would say you're pretty heavy at running back, actually. And Perrine's fine, too, for this season. Would you do Deontay for
Kendra
Miller. And the answer is no. What you need, quote unquote, and for a start, I don't think it's that strong of a need for you, doesn't determine what trades you do. And that's just too little for Deontay. That's a mid to early second for Deontay, and just keeping him there. But that's a position you need to be thin at. Like, you don't need any wide receiver depth, so you use the roster space that you would perhaps spend on a couple of wide receivers on just rostering any running back that might be on a depth chart that might open up at some point. And that's the way to play it. But no, definitely a no to that trade. Zach, what were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say, if you're going to make a trade to go get a running back, start looking at some of the guys who are undervalued by the community. And
Aaron
I know
Jones.
we talk about this, like running backs this is not the time to necessarily go get running backs because there's a long way to go between now and the season when they're scoring you points. But yeah, I mean, you just said Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is a great one. I think that right now, there are some really interesting like values. I think Najee Harris is being undervalued. I think DeAndre Swift is being undervalued. Finally, both of them. Finally.
Najee Harris is being slandered against, but he's still drafted really high. If you know what I mean? Like, he doesn't come cheap. He comes at, I mean, what's his ADP right now? Like, I love Najee Harris. I love it when someone in my league hates him. But, I mean, you'll give him multiple firsts if it's a straight-up trade, which you don't want to do for a running back. But I agree that we should like him, and he normally gets some slander against him. I'm just saying, my answer to these questions is usually, hey, I'm writing that up every week. I'm going by position. I'm looking at rookies. I'm looking at who we should be targeting, using ranks to try and give us an edge over ADP. And the ones that stick out in running back, and the last time I looked at running back were Nick Chubb, Aaron Jones. Both you might find good trades on just based on the fact that ranks like them more than ADP right now. Also, Derrick Henry, J.K. Dobbins. A little expensive.
Swift is going two spots behind Deontay Johnson right now in startup in ADP. That's wild.
And personally, if you look at my ranks, Swift stands out. Yeah. So, yeah. But again, I tend not to, especially in the offseason. This offseason is an interesting time to do it, but I'll go looking for those running backs if and when I need them. Like, I can play the first 4 weeks and decide kind of a thing. Yeah. But again, that's just how my roster's built. Yours might be different. But Henry Drew says, "Oh no, smash that like button," and I agree with that.
Drew, I also think that you're worried about having Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is going to smash again this year. He's going to do the Derrick Henry thing. They still haven't added anybody that scares me to their roster. They still don't have a quarterback who's going to throw the ball 700 times. It's still running through Derrick Henry, no matter what they have said they're going to do. What they've shown us is Derrick Henry is still the guy there, and Jonathan Taylor should have a pretty good bounce back too.
I mean, this is a good redraft team, let alone a good dynasty team. I think you're Julying it, Drew. It's like, how can I get better? Which is a good question to ask, but like, you don't have to start a roster for a while. You have 3 starting running backs right there. You're starting 10 players a week, and you just listed 9 that in every week start in most dynasty leagues. Like, I don't think where's my 10th player is like, don't panic on it too much, especially since that 10th player would just be someone you're putting Perino on the bench for, I guess, some weeks, But yeah, I get it. The RBs buy lose are Joe Mixon, Aaron Jones, and Kamara. I think Kamara's interesting because you're playing a legal gamble there, if anything. Joe Mixon, I'm kind of like done. Like, I was never very in. He was a disappointing top 12 running back for a couple years, and then I'm done. I think I'm done with that. He's not Nick Chubb. I'm not going to wait for him to become Nick Chubb at this point. And while he is cheap, if you will, in Dynasty, like, if I'm going to go get a running back right now at all, it's going to be someone that I think has a lot more value upside, because that's what you do in the offseason. You're shopping for value rather than a starting roster. And Joe Mixon can finish as running back 1 overall this year. And apart from an in-season trade to another team, you're not getting what you trade away to get him right now. Like, he's never going up by the end of the season. And I'm not trading for points in July. In general, I'm looking for value upside, which is why Swift, to Zach's point, is more interesting. I think Aaron Jones is a slight exception because his value is so low. Like, it doesn't. I think his value can come up a little bit this offseason, but that's a fair point. I've traded into Aaron Jones once. I haven't done it a lot. That's why my default is mostly I'm not making running back trades right now, but I think Aaron Jones is a fair point. I worry about Joe Mixon's starting this year, to be honest. I mean, as many games as we expect. With Aaron Jones, I don't have those concerns. Kamara, similar. Like, does he start? Is the risk? I have Najee in one Dynasty league, and I nearly upchuck every time I hear his name. It feels like the next Trent Richardson. Trent Richardson had already busted for you by now, buddy. He had a pretty good first year, a terrible second year. Like, that was the arc. Najee Harris is well past that. And also, we can kind of see what Trent Richardson did. Najee Harris is a product of a good running back in a terrible situation, but he still gets all the volume. And so everyone that wants to believe they know what a good player is based on statistics wants to point to all the number go red boxes and say that player bad, when any realistic reading of the situation is like, that guy's doing really well in that situation, and he's earning the volume because he's good. Like, that's what it is. He's slightly older because he came into the league slightly older, and so everyone wants to hate him anyway. Unfortunately, his value is high enough. I can't say buy Najee Harris right now, but like the slander is unwarranted, in my opinion.
It's funny to me. His first season, he got 300 and whatever 10 carries. He had 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns. Last year, he got 270 whatever carries for 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. So it was the difference between everybody raving about him and him being the RB3. And last year was 30 carries and 200 yards.
We're fickle.
We're something.
Yeah. The statistical argument against him, I think, is bunk. But you're right on the value hype of his actual production.
The drop-off in receptions was not Jalen Warren. The drop-off in receptions was the fact that his quarterback went from being a Hall of Fame quarterback throwing the ball 7 yards or shorter to being Kenny Pickett, who is going to have to pay admission to the Hall of Fame anytime he goes.
Yeah, let me just hang on. If you're looking at a number, it's worth looking at if you're looking at he only got X of Y, then the Y is important. So if you look at the Pittsburgh offense in 2022, we see that they passed for I'm trying to pull it up real quick. I don't want to pull up a spreadsheet, so I'm trying to use Pro Football Reference, and that can be awkward for me. They passed for less, man. That's why there's less targets. They didn't pass as much. Like that, he didn't lose targets, and Jalen Warren didn't efficiency his way into the role, although he was efficient relative to a small sample. Last season, it was just
they threw 100 more. They threw 100 more passes with Roethlisberger.
It's like Cooper Kupp wasn't the wide receiver 1 last year, but it's because he didn't play 9 games. Or he only played 9 games. He was still something I was looking at just today. Justin Jefferson's phenomenal season last year playing in the Cooper Kupp role. 66% of his weeks, he finished inside the top 32. That's why we felt the power of it. The average of the number 1 wide receiver is below that. He was producing so much more on a weekly basis. That's the value of it. It's what John Hogue says is unsustainable. Cooper Kupp the year before, 86%. 86% of his weeks were spent inside the top 32 overall. That's why it was such a phenomenal season. Also, what unsustainable looks like. But last year, only in 9 games, 66% of his games, he was inside the top 32. He's basically Justin Jefferson, but he doesn't play quite as much. And that's the Najee Harris argument to me. Like, if you only play half a season, you should have a lower overall count. And if you play in an offense that passes for less, when you're the running back, so you're not even really driving the passing offense, you're going to get less targets. It's just, I think it's June, July takes. Everyone's got to stand on some hill. And not you, Henry, but like that's my response to why you got less. And again, don't get me wrong. He's not Nate Chubb.
Yeah,
he's not Trent McCaffrey. He's not that. But he's a very good second tier of that. And he's got the volume. It's that simple. If you're going to ask me, Bijan Robinson over Najee Harris, sure. Austin Eckler over Najee Harris? Sure. Yes, I would also agree with that. But at a certain point, a good running back in a bad situation that has proven they can do something pretty good, actually, relative to the team situation on that volume is just a good pick, which is why he's not a buy, but he's kind of slandered in that range. Like, don't reach for him. I'm not going out and throwing picks after Najee Harris anymore. But I'm pretty happy to roster him. But again, you feel slightly different. Unfortunately, if you feel slightly different, the problem is that slander means that trading him away, you're probably losing overall because his points are going to be worth more than what you trade him for. But
But
so I
this
understand the
is
frustration.
this is one last year we were advocating trading Ken Walker or ETN for Najee Harris plus, and you could have done that.
Yeah, I mean, and to the point, I wouldn't trade for Najee Harris right now, but I would still do those trades.
Right.
Like if I can get Najee Harris plus for Travis Etienne, a guy that wasn't as broadly thought to have been hurt by the draft, cool. Jahmyr Gibbs, I could probably get really good pluses with Najee Harris for Jahmyr Gibbs, and I like Jahmyr Gibbs a lot, but I don't expect his range of outcomes to be that top tier either. Right. So it just puts him in the Najee hit tier, slightly younger, don't get me wrong, slightly more draft capital, which is wonderful. But if I'm getting a really significant plus, that's cool if I'm thinking about running backs. But I don't tend to suggest those running backs for what I said earlier. Like, I'm not shopping for points right now, which is what the position is in general. I don't think Najee is going to increase drastically in value, except for in season when he's scoring points, maybe. And so I'll wait and see if I need him. But if one of those moves is possible, like if you have Gibbs and you're just looking to make a move, then getting a first with Najee Harris for Gibbs seems like a win, but that seems like such a specific trade. I don't imagine that happens in every league. So we tend not to throw them out as buys. It's not really, a buy low if you're throwing out Jahmyr Gibbs. Like, that's a really good, it's not low, it's not free. It's not a second round pick. But yeah, there are moves like that you could try on competitive teams, I suppose. My 10 questions plus what top 32? 32 overall scorers and PPR scoring. Like in a week, the top 32 overall scoring players. And the good thing about that is you can just ignore positions, because if you finish in the top side of the top 32, no matter what position you are, in a single week, to get inside the top 32, you basically have to score about 25 points, I think it is. That's what the top 32 players, that or better. Inside the top 96 and 132, it's the same thing. So whether you're a quarterback, wide receiver, running back, you're kind of scoring a similar level of points in a single week to get inside that boundary. And the reason I'm using 32, 96, 132 is 32 players every week means there's no other better starts, because 3 flex positions, right? Even in a super flex. So they should be started every week. Everyone scoring the top 32 should be started that week. So there's literally just in any league format, that number of players is startable. Like, it's top tier, if you know what I mean. And again, it's also a points per game or a points threshold that actually kind of matters in more games. Like, most games in a Dynasty league are won by over 30 points. So 20 isn't great, but it definitely gets you much closer to the ceiling. If you want to get 30 points, you're talking about the top 12 overall scorers, and it's just too small a category to hit, I think. That's literally just top 12 quarterbacks most week, But anyway, so that's it. And as for, I put out a thread today, let everyone know what's going on. And John asked some questions there because he doesn't know how chat works, I guess. What was my first spreadsheet? It's pinned to my timeline on Twitter. It's my college database. That's the first thing I ever said about building. Some version of that was the first spreadsheet I actually sat down with. I knew of Excel. I've probably typed in it before, used it as a calculator before, but the first time I tried building a spreadsheet was that college database. Next question. One thing you're doing in your leagues. I'm just pruning, mostly strutting around, showing my stuff off to the league mates. No, Rashad Bateman this offseason has probably been my most common move, but also that series I'm writing up for DLF. When I come to a conclusion, I'm sending out trade offers based on it. So I've added George Kittle. I've added Aaron Jones this offseason in a couple of different leagues, and Rashad Bateman in 3. The majority of my leagues I now have him in the majority of my leagues. Yeah.
I'm trying to underpay for Amari Cooper.
That's a good one.
I think he's a top 12 wide receiver for the next at least 2 years. So,
I mean, but cheaper than Devontae Adams.
Yeah,
similar,
absolutely.
Similar
or make that move where I do the Devontae Adams for Addison plus. If I can do that, I'll do that now. I don't care. It's the same move I made trading Michael Thomas for Justin Jefferson. I did that. I'll make that bet.
Depending on my league situation, I go in different directions based on the team situation. But the broad category, when I'm looking at my rosters, I'm trying to get as much value into the very top of quarterback and the very top of wide receiver right now. and trying to take some shots at George Kittle, I guess. But I'm not doing that at tight end and running back specifically right now, because I think that the top of those two positions are due a lot more change. Something I'm right about besides Kyler, nothing. You've got almost. I mean, let's see. You had a point that starting a quarterback on a week-to-week basis is a more comfortable decision. It's harder to start a wide receiver, hard to have as much confidence again, a finish at a certain point at the end of the season. Like which wide receiver is top 24 is more of a question than which quarterback is, because there's only 32 of them, so it's just a better odds bet. So that's something I thought was a good point that you brought up in that thread that we had. No, you hate Lamar Miller, Lamar Jackson, sorry, I can't even say that. You hate Juju Smith-Schuster, so I can't say that. You hate Justin Jefferson, so I don't know what else. That's what occurs to me off the top of my head. Cooper Kupp or Chris Olave? The Dynasty answer is Chris Olave. But if I'm on a competitive team, you won't get Cooper Kupp off me for Chris Olave. So there's a way of saying that. And if I'm on a competitive team, I might send Chris Olave to get Cooper Kupp plus and be very happy with that kind of a trade. And that's all the questions. Those are all the questions. No other question marks in that thread. Eric did ask in that thread as well, can't move my Debo shares. What's fair? That's a similar problem with Najee Harris, but Najee's actually been producing. Debo's an injury question. If he's healthy, you're good. Got a lot of upside, usable floor. But he gets injured a lot. Rich Harbaugh once called him a monster truck with the constitution of a F1 car, and that sounds about right. You know, he plays like a monster truck, but he gets injured as easily as a Formula One racing car. I think that's fair. He looks like a value. I want to trade for him, but the reason that he's got a lack of tradability, not value, but tradability, is because while we know he's got ceiling and he's interesting and still in the midpoint of his career, there is always an injury question. So on the rosters where I have Debo, I've mostly bought relatively below average trades. Like I've gotten him fairly well. And on rosters where I need to build, you're just trading Debo for whatever you can get. So see, that's where you might go to some of your sleepers, like a younger wide receiver who's less proven, like Treylon Burks or Rashad Bateman that you think in, but you're trying to get pluses with that because there's risk involved and you're building, so you're trying to avoid risk. And so like a second on top of Treylon, or straight up for Treylon Burks would be a good trade if they're interested, or Rashad Bateman plus seconds, I guess. But Debo is a difficult trade to do and to get rid of because he's undervalued, but he's also not, because the risk is real, if you know what I mean. It's not because everyone thinks he's not good. It's because he gets injured a lot. Does that sound right, Zach? Is there any trade? You've come up with some good ones for those running backs. Is there a trade you can think of you try to explore for Debo?
Man, I Debo, to me, I would want to get the points back. So it would be like a Chubb, something like that.
So you switch position.
Where you're getting it, where you're positional, or you might be able to get Kittle plus something, you know. So again, pivot positions and understand that you're gonna on the face of it take a loss. But if you can regain those points, I don't think you're ever going to see the peak Debo value. You may see peak Debo points again, but you're never going to see peak Debo value. So if you can pivot out to a player that maybe descends slower, you know, the value descend is slower, then that's what I try to do, where I can still get the points. But
okay, so I'm learning about threads while I do this. So someone mentioned it in the nerd group DM I've got, and where they're all nerds, they all have like this. They're nerds, man. They've got information. Like, well, if you look at the algorithm, it turns out you can't order your feed chronologically. I'm like, okay, I got to figure out what that sentence means now. So yeah, that's what Jeff asked. On Twitter, appreciate you, my man. Some people thought you couldn't ask questions unless your name's John Hogue. You can ask me questions anywhere. It's fine. It's just John. It's just John that we hate. Stephen, welcome in, man. Stephen White currently is a starting tight end, starting with no tight end yet. Who's your favorite late round target? Good question. Zach, do you want to go first this time? And I mean, define late round. You know,
well, he did
in
the next one. Currently in the 12th round.
Okay.
So that his next post is currently in the 12th round. For me, that is pretty close to the time where I'm willing to start pulling the trigger on some of these rookies. So like Laporta, Mayer. I'm not a Kincaid fan, but if he's still around, that's fine too. A little later than that, Dulcich is a good stab. I still like Tyler Higbee. If I'm doing a startup and I just want tight end points, Higbee is one of the most undervalued points producing tight ends, and Gerald Everett will do that too for you. So I mean, any of those guys, and you may be able to. You probably won't be able to wait too much longer with the rookies, Steve, but with some of those veterans, I think you'll probably go another 2-3 rounds before you got to pull the trigger.
Oh, that's fine. Hang on. I'm looking at the 12th round. I'm looking at BLS current ADP, and Sam Laporta and that group are in there. But I got my formula wrong here, so I can't pull up my easy answers. So I'll just look. Sam Laporta, Michael Mayer, pretty good. Greg DeLuch is in the 12th round if he's still there in your draft. I really like drafting him right now. A little further down, round 14, to the Tyler Higbee argument, Dalton Schultz. Just a little underrated in terms of how he's produced. New team, sure, but I mean,
I'm concerned with volume in Houston. Yeah, that's all.
But I mean, we're talking about 14th round.
It's really funny to me that you've come around on Schultz because
I didn't like him up there. Damn here.
But he wasn't being drafted up there. He was just scoring up there. He was getting 100 targets, and he was being drafted as like tight end like 14.
Well, so if players continue to do something, I value them more than doing it once. But also, like, the hype on him has dropped significantly. I couldn't trade him for a second round pick and get a plus before, whereas now literally no one wants him. That's different to me. But in that same round, someone I would draft above Schultz for sure. Trey McBride.
Yes,
he's down below Laporta, below Michael Mayer from this year's draft. He's below Greg DeLuch from last year's draft. And he's below Dalton Schultz. Trey McBride should actually be above most of those.
You could honestly do the McBride, and then in like the 20th round draft Ertz, and then you would get the tight end production. Whoever's going to score, it would be great.
But if someone is, to be fair, it's tight end. But we can keep going with that. But you see the pattern. Isaiah Likely is much further down. He's in like the 20th round according to ADP. But between round 12 and 20, players can go anywhere, so don't necessarily wait till the 20th round if you do like Isaiah Likely. I draft him well before the 20th round. Outside the 10th, I'm thinking running backs, I'm thinking tight ends, and so they tend to come up, or quarterbacks, so they come up a lot earlier for me in general. And I tend to stack a lot of them with that scattershot approach for that reason. I'm not taking as many. I've got like one or two wide receivers I'll take somewhere, like Justin Ross maybe. Outside of that, I'm grabbing these tight ends quite a lot. And in the same vein, if you want to go that deep, someone you've mentioned, and I don't mind drafting any rookie tight end, to be honest with you. Tucker Kraft from this year's draft. You're not expecting something from this year, but to put on the back of your depth chart, start playing that deep shot tight end strat. Yeah. He's right there with Higbee, actually. Actually, Higbee's 2 rounds in round 20, and Kraft is in round 18. But again, it's kind of the Wild West of ADP down there. You know, if you draft him in the 16th, no one's going to blink. Someone else does, you shan't be too surprised. Those are the ones that stand out to me, and there's a bunch, and there should be. I made a video last offseason, around this time of year, actually, doing a version of something JJ Zachary's been doing for a long time, but I put it in a me kind of context, which is where the league winners come from, the players who score more points than you would expect based on their ADP. Where do they come from? And the very clear sign after round 10, 12 is that they come from running back. Again, more running backs come from them, and they come from tight end. And that was the unexploited edge I found in that deep dive. It was draft the tight ends you like higher than everyone else. Once you get to that doldrums of the draft, after round 10, after round 12, after round 14, just start picking up the tight ends you like. They're easy to drop, and it's very clear when they started to do something. So why not? And if you're looking at tight ends, And we've mentioned Schultz and Higbee just as underrated producers, but you like wide receivers, you're looking at 1 and 2 guys. That's it. Henry, Najee had a huge drop off in receiver. Oh, where we dealt with that. Yeah,
it was about a 3%. Like if you're talking about like percentage of the pie, it was about a 3.5%, maybe 4. So a little bit of a drop off, but I don't. Jalen Warren does not scare me. That's the Alex Cora argument. Like efficiency on 77 carries in situations where it's going to benefit him to get carries is not like that. That doesn't scare me.
I think Tony Pollard's broken some people because running backs don't do that. They don't work from a small share into a large share gradually. They don't earn their role by year 4. That's basically what Tony Pollard has done, but that's not how running backs work typically. So it's not that it can't happen. You should evaluate the player, what you think of them if you have a player evaluation process. But the idea that Jalen Waddle is showing signs that he should be worked into the offense more, I mean, the coaching staff might think that, in which case maybe it'll work out, but stats aren't going to indicate that very well. More often than not, you're just looking at a small sample efficiency trap. And if I remember right, on some of the stuff I've read and seen posted on Twitter from people that I like, they're pointing out the coaching staff typically specifically does not do that. And they specifically don't share the workload with those smaller time backs as much. I'm gonna, even though it'll probably crash the stream, look up something because I said it pretty strongly, so I want to back myself up here. Najee Harris, my seasonal database. What's he done the last 2 years?
He was at like 14%.
Yeah, he dropped down. He's got 40 less targets from 94 down to 53.
Yep.
But his target share went from
14-ish to 9
or 9%.
Yeah. So it
seems proportional to the offense.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
Yep. I mean, it's not ideal for fantasy for sure, Henry. Like that, it's.
Oh yeah, you want those receptions, but as much as he was worth investing in last year, he's worth investing in this year. I think that drop doesn't scare me.
It's better. It's better to be in a better offense. And right
relative
now, Pittsburgh
to,
is
as long as he's going below Eckler and below Chubb, and like, what are we doing here? You know. In Dynasty, he's probably going above Chubb now. I think about it, but that's the age thing. People's minds are broken on career arc versus age. It's different. So you might find some advantage there. And I think Zach said that if you could trade him for a Nick Chubb plus instead of switching positions, that's a solid idea as well. Go for one of those older running backs that's in the same range. You got the points, and maybe you get some plus for the age. That's cool. Fantasy Football Garage, what's up? What's up, my man? Thanks very much. Josh M, green name. Don't know what it means, but it makes you look special. Appreciate you, Josh. Harris just feels too old to get and him having any value, but Jalen Waddle is okay, though. Yeah, the thing is, Jalen Waddle's value is probably hype, and it probably, I mean, it can. I don't know the man. I don't know the player. He could be phenomenal and been sleeping all this time. It happens. I mean, Tony Pollard happened. But the balance of probability is Jalen Warren is just another running back that probably could have just stayed on the waiver wire, or maybe you get a start out of, which is why we roster a lot of deep running backs. Najee Harris, probably a top 12 running back in volume, if not in points, and probably in points as well, because that's basically where the volume comes from, where the points come from in general, but especially at running back. So it's different proposition. Harris probably won't increase in value, but he has should have real world value. Jalen Warren's value is built on a hope, a dream, a myth that someone on Twitter might agree with you and will get all the engagement. But then you go to your league mate and like, give me a second with Jalen Warren. And they're like, no. And while they don't like Najee Harris, so you might find trades more difficult. The odds are that in more leagues, more often, you're going to find something for Najee Harris at some point, especially in seasons when I believe balance of probabilities is scoring points. And if you're in the middle of the league or you're in a position to trade him, you're like, hey, you want a running back starter for the next 10 weeks? He just put up a 20-point game. It's going to be relative to Jalen Warren, fairly easy to trade him. So, there's hype and there's value. And honestly, both of those things change based on your leagues, Josh. So you can just call me a liar. In my league, that's not happening. That could be true. Don't let me speak for you. You know your league better than I do. Henry, Warren had, when we come down to citing yards per carry, you know we're in the running backs efficiency thing. And I'm not saying he's not good. He's on an NFL depth chart. He's damn good. But I can tell you, no player evaluation involved, 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, that a player being efficient on a smaller sample behind a running back who's established himself fairly early in his career as having a large share of the offense doesn't turn into Tony Pollard this year. I mean, Tony Pollard did happen, but it was, again, it's one of very few examples. And like Zeke, last year was kind of an explanation. And even then, Tony Pollard had to be insanely efficient on a slightly larger volume to do what he did last year. So anyway, it's just, I can tell you it's the rare event. So like it accordingly, if you know what I mean. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying you don't like roster Jalen Warren for sure. He's a running back. We roster running backs, and we roster running backs deeply. Just do it relative to that, because that I can tell you is true. Even if it happens, it's still relatively rare. So you can, not throw a first at it. Obviously, you weren't going to do that. Henry, if I could sell Najee for anything close to his value, I would. Yeah, that's where I just start calling people holds. And you can't. We tried to suggest some ideas. Switch positions. You can find a way to get something like their value out, and go for the age argument, like Nick Chubb versus Najee Harris. You've got age. Knowing your league mates can often help with that situation. Me, I just throw out the trade offers. Or especially on building rosters, and he's a running back, you can either wait to the season, which is probably where you're at right now. When there are points on the table, you suddenly have more to offer, even though you should probably expect those points right now. It's July. People don't want to trade for them because some idiot like me would tell them not to be honest. But when there are points on the table, you might find it easier for those competitive teams that might be more interested, or you can sell below market, because what your league thinks is honestly the only value that really matters. So if they don't value him as a first, but they might value him as Rashad Bateman plus a second, or they might value him as a 25 first because it's so far away, or they might value him on your favorite tight end sleeper plus a couple seconds. You're going well below value, but you're trying to do the best you can in your market for your team situation. That's the way I would approach it anyway. Or you're just waiting for the season. If you can't find anything close to what you think is reasonable, then you wait for the season, and those points should make it a little easier, and you can try again. That's actually, I should say that's one thing I do try and do in my leagues. I don't go full ball at one point in the season sending out offers, because by the time you get to the season, and there are points, if they've already received 20 offers a week from you for Najee Harris, then when he has points, they're already, one, biased against him because they're tired of saying no to Najee Harris, and two, they know you're desperate. So send a few select offers at different points in the year, and that's a cautionary note, I'll put it. I have done that. I've made people tired of trade offers with that player in it, and even when it was better for them, they just weren't interested. So, I just throw that out. Mitchell Wood, is Russ okay? He's been off the show and the podcast for a bit. Yeah, he's doing a bunch of work for Scott Fishbowl. Zach, you know more about that, right?
Yes. Yeah. So Russ is doing a whole bunch of stuff for fantasycares.org. He's doing a whole bunch of stuff for the SFB merch and getting that kind of squared away. And he and again, like super busy at home too, but he's good. In fact, I just spoke with him about 20 minutes ago, and we're thinking about doing something with towards the night before Fishbowl on the Fantasy Cares website or YouTube channel or something. But Mitchell, I appreciate you asking, because Russ is awesome. But he also lost power last week. Like, he was going to do the Trade Addict show with Rocky, lost power, couldn't do it. He did a 25-minute episode last week, so like it's still there. Like he's out there.
He's trying his best, and the reason he's not here is charity. He doesn't talk to me, though. I didn't talk to him 20 minutes ago, and I still personally believe he's here because not here because he hates me. But in real, Russ is working 24/7 at this point on making money for kids, so it's hard to hate him too hard, basically. Not just making money for kids in need of charity, but also getting you all into the Scott Fishbowl. So, like,
he, Scott Fish, and J Mike are three of the idea you have about them as people is absolutely right. And so, like again, Mitchell, I appreciate you asking, because it's nice to hear people care about the people they should be cared about. And then Russ is definitely one of them.
Henry says he's doing an underdog Dalmatian as I'm listening to show. It's been a while since I played even the best ball drafts, but I'm assuming the Dalmatian is like related to the puppy drafts that they used to have.
Yeah.
So
yeah. That was my.
I haven't been able to do them this. I enjoyed the hell out of just posting drafts and drafting with everyone, but I like blew $200 on it. I won most of it back, to be fair. And I just don't. I haven't been able to do that this June and July, but maybe I'll get back to it. They're a lot of fun.
That was my
$3.
My parody open the last show I did, the episode 247 of the Dynasty Dummies. Shout out to the Puppy Bowl. Shout out to the guys doing the DFS grinding and the best ball grinding.
Yes, sir. Zay Jones or Marcus Mariota? I mean, as a start, Zay Jones. As a roster, Zay Jones. Like, I'm not taking terrible.
Is this Hogue on a burner?
It must be his burner.
It is Zay Jones. Yeah. It's gross, but
see what John Hogue is lusting for is top 24 quarterbacks with continuous contracts. And what I'm trying to point out to him is that the very top of quarterback is better than it has literally ever been in every quantifiable measure. And what he's remembering isn't Phillip Rivers and Ben Roethlisberger being further down values forever. It's an era of the NFL where they just had quarterbacks and they kept them for longer and they underperformed worse. And so late round QB was more of the strategy. Whereas right now, it's all about bridge quarterbacks and one-year starters and playing Gardner Minshew for a year. And hey, look, we got Brock Purdy. That's what they do now. And even if they didn't, those guys didn't produce like these guys, so it doesn't matter.
The late round quarterback strategy so there's a divergence in the strategy with redraft versus dynasty too, because in redraft, like you can get one of those guys for a season. Like Ritter may be fine for a season, but in 2 years, Ritter is going to be Mariota. And Mariota,
well, that's the thing. He's thinking Joe Flacco and Eli Manning, but that right now doesn't exist. That mediocre quarterback who's just
Daniel Jones
thinking about job security, and I think it's a really smart part of his strategy. The idea that you're going to have him for 3 years in Dynasty, that matters at that low value.
Yeah,
but I just turned on some kind of weird ass. Hang on, I hit some sort of special key and it all went to coding mode. I didn't even know I had one of those. The thing is, why I mentioned the bridge quarterbacks and the one-year starter is they're not just throwing a contract and Eli Manning for an NFL situation was actually above average. He took him to Super Bowls, for goodness sake. But that's Matthew Stafford right now. It's Matthew Stafford. It's Dak Prescott. We have those guys too, but they're going higher because we've just been through a period of realizing the value of late-round quarterback. So they're actually higher drafted than general. And the deeper guys he's thinking about, like Joe Flacco and even Phillip Rivers, was kind of mediocre as a starter, but solid for multiple years. And as an NFL quarterback, also had more advantage than his fantasy production started. They're not doing that anymore. It's Brock Purdy. It's Gardner Minshew. It's let's get a bridge guy in Kenny Pickett and get someone else the next year. It's let's take an extra shot and a second quarterback in this draft and then trade him away and everyone bets fantasy roster space on him. And it just turns out he's never a starter. What's that guy's name? The second quarterback they took and they traded him afterwards when they got Kyler. I can't even remember. That's how much those deeper quarterbacks more
Rosen
in the NFL, in the actual NFL, which means you're getting that idea. And it's not that it's not viable anymore. It's just being the edges of it are being limited from several directions. One, the top quarterbacks Lamar Jackson, sorry, he's in there. Even Dak Prescott is in there at the very bottom. Joe Burrow, Herbert, Allen, and Mahomes. We had 3 quarterbacks that average above Peyton Manning's very best year for fantasy last season, in one season. And over the last 3, we've seen multiple quarterbacks over multiple years have a more startable season at the very top end, those top 32 starts. In the last 3 years, we've had a quarterback do that every year. Peyton Manning was the only guy to have done that before the recent era. There's no real way of overstating how much this era of top-end quarterbacks, not because they're better than Peyton Manning, but because of the nature of the NFL is, just different levels of scorers. And those guys are locked in for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years, injury notwithstanding. And that bottom class is more replaceable quarterbacks, so the NFL is just going to keep churning. And then you do have that small middle class of Dak Prescott, and you're getting a Matthew Stafford as well, who's, I mean, he's definitely above average era, and a Jared Goff thrown in. So there's a small section of them, but they're higher drafted than they used to be because, I mean, JJ Zacharyson told us all about it, so we figured it out. So, like, those are the worth a first-round pick, but they're deep, but they have value, but they're going to start it for multiple years. Those are the guys. And then you're going to get a just constant churning at the back end with Marcus Mariota starting for different teams and occasional Brock Purdy and Gardner Minshew. And again, I can't tell the future, but that's what's been going on recently. And it's very different than what happened in the era John's talking about a lot. And it's not that that changes the way he has to play, but I think, and again, I'm actually not disagreeing. I try and understand how things are working so that how I have to behave in accordance with it. It's not that valuing quarterback isn't still an edge in fantasy. You just can't value it like it's going to be 2010 again pretty soon. Like history is cyclical, but it's not a circle. So anyway, yeah, that's part of the conversation we are having. And I find it really interesting. The reason I'm having it isn't because I think it's just debunked, man, and I want to own John Hogue. It's because it's a really interesting area of Dynasty right now that we should try and figure out what we think of it and make adjustments to our Dynasty strategy. Because as much as it doesn't matter relative to even playing a professional game, like that's what we do, right? That's what we're here for. So, like, I think it's a really important area to consider. Sorry, that was a simple question to go on for that long, but yeah, what else we got to talk about? Fantasy Football Ninja. Meet Tacit Assassin, by the way. Hey, gents, in the 4th round of a single QB, single running back, single tight end premium, 2 wide receiver, 2 flex, 16-team league, Dynasty startup draft. First thirds, I got first to 3 maybe. Trevor Lawrence in round 1, Gibbs in round 2, and Hawkinson in round 3. You overdrafted Hawkinson. Other than that, doing pretty well.
And Lawrence in a single QB.
Yeah. And you're also heavily favoring points here, which is fine, but like there are better points. Your build seems to suggest points, but you've gone youth with points, which is a conflicting. I mean, we all want cake and to eat it too, but you probably could have done better in both directions. But I mean, in a single quarterback, Zach's right. I didn't even notice that off the rip. That's probably the biggest reach. Gibbs is good. Hawkinson's probably an overreach, but he'll be fine. Fine. Someone's got to be 4th, you know? But yeah, Lawrence in a single QB. You know, every now and again, I think I'm going too far on some Twitter arguments, but the way people are hyping up Trevor Lawrence, I think leads to this. Oh, he's got top 5 upside. I mean, yeah, of course he does. He's a fantastic quarterback, young in his career and everything else. But betting on that in fantasy is not the same as saying Lamar Jackson is a pretty decent value or get Josh Allen or get Patrick Mahomes. You're wishing upon a star that we have more unrealistic outcomes at the same position. Like, it's a great era of quarterback because of who we have. That doesn't, like, that phenomenal production we're getting isn't a reason to expect more phenomenal production. It's respect how phenomenal and rare it is to have 3 quarterbacks that did that last year and value those guys instead of hoping another one does it. And I think when we get in our Twitter hype bubble, sometimes we forget not everyone's following through from the start to the end of our thought process. So seeing the middle bit and thinking, I also like Trevor Lawrence.
Well,
it's not quite the same thing.
In the first round of a 16-team 1 quarterback league, at the very end of the first round, I might consider
Yeah,
Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and Hurts. But other than that, like if people want to, like to me, that means that like 6 or 7 quarterbacks went off. If you're getting Lawrence, if 6 or 7 quarterbacks have gone off in the first round, that means that you have a chance to get Amon-Ra St. Brown. You have a chance to get Waddle. You have a chance to get CFC. You have a chance to get Garrett Wilson. You have a chance to get Breece Hall. Like to me, that's what like I'm going to be excited about. But anyway, the real question is who should I pick up in the 4th round? And the options, if you go down one more, are Christian Watson, George Kittle, DeAndre Swift, DJ Moore, Pittman, Dobbins, McLaurin, or Ridley are the top 8 available.
Kittle is the only guy I would consider at the 4th round there.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe Pittman in a dynasty, maybe Pittman. I prefer them over Watson, so that's probably the order: Kittle, Pittman, Watson, DJ Moore.
I think McLaurin maybe to me it may be Kittle, McLaurin, but
we both said Kittle, so we'll go
yeah. I think there's and I wish you hadn't drafted Hawkinson in the 3rd because
which is another reason why it's a little over.
Getting the better tight end in the 4th. I mean,
but for your build, Kittle actually makes sense. All the points.
Well, if it's not tight end,
you need upside after spending that on a quarter. I'm thinking maybe Watson that overtakes because while I don't believe, he's young and did well and should do well again at some point. I think it's Kittle, but Watson's a fair conversation.
What was the argument for Watson?
He did well in his rookie season, and those guys tend to
efficiency, though, right? Like high efficiency.
No, he actually just got a lot of points. Is a way of saying it.
Okay, so he scored a lot of touchdowns on a lot of deep throws.
It was
which is
efficiency. Yeah.
Yes, and he's not going to. I will.
I'm with you.
And like he's not going to do that same thing this year because 1, regression is a thing and whatever, but 2, going back to the Hall of Fame quarterback argument, Aaron Rodgers is a Hall of Fame quarterback and the most efficient quarterback I have witnessed outside of maybe Drew Brees. Jordan Love
is the guy, by the way.
Yeah, Jordan Love is not that.
I said Kittle, but the other way of asking the question is who are your league mates more likely to give you better value for in 3 months? And I'm more likely to believe there's a Watson believer in your league right now, based on the hype bubbles I'm seeing, that's going to give you more than they should on Watson. That's the only little asterisk I'm putting in here. If you really want to go all variants and know your league, that matters here for Fantasy Football Ninja. There is a path with maybe get Watson and trade him. But personally, I draft Kittle. And Henry, you traded Thomas for Jefferson. Nice job.
Yes, I did.
I traded away Burrow and a high second for MT a couple years ago before he bombed.
And that was it. It was Jefferson was not playing at that point. It was the first 4 games of the season, and everyone was talking about how Jefferson was a wash and Michael Thomas was still being Michael Thomas. And I said, you know what? I like Justin Jefferson is in the top 2 of wide receivers that I've ever graded coming out on film.
This is why I don't do a lot of player evaluation. The player evaluation I do is rookies because it's what you have.
Yeah.
And it's when everyone starts saying Jamar Chase isn't even going to start the season before the season starts, or he's going to be terrible because of, I don't know, what was it? He couldn't remember how to catch in the preseason training or something.
Oh, Chase. He had like 2 drops.
I don't remember what the success rate. I don't know what the success rate could be of those trades. But all you have at that point is really your rookie profile work, what you think of them. And you send offers on rookies that the people I think are disappointing all the way up until the end of the season. I got Najee Harris. I got, not Najee Harris. Geez, his name's on my mind. I got N'Keal Harried a few times because of that. But that just means I have to do better at my profile work. I was wrong on N'Keal Harry. Why? Figure it out. I don't want to make that mistake again. But the right move in Dynasty is to, if someone's disappointing before they finish their rookie season, preseason, off, in season by week 4, that you target those guys that you think are good. And if you get it wrong, then you back to the profile work, you know. But yeah, I don't know what the success rate of those trade offers could be. But if you ever get one, you remember. In Superflex Best Ball, send Goff and a mid-24 first for Kyler. Goff and a mid... yes. Actually, yes.
Yeah, that's tough before this. It's tough before the season, though, because I feel like your 24 first is going to be higher than what you think. Because if you're trading away unless you have quarterbacks to spare, but like I think people are expecting Kyler to come back after like week 6. I think that he'll probably be closer to week 10 before he's ready. And if they are bad, there is no reason why they play him.
Yeah. But, you know, not to Zach read it up here, but that does mean you've got a year to get another first-round pick. But it is tough to trade away your first, knowing you're trading into less points.
Yeah.
It's a fair point.
I mean, but yes, in a vacuum, yes, I would send that for Kyler. I think Kyler's much better quarterback than Goff.
If it ends up being a top 4 pick, that's the only way you're like, dang.
Yeah.
Probably could have done better later. But anyway, how do you handle managers ridiculously overvaluing non-stud players? How to fill depth? I don't have an exact way I build in Dynasty, so that makes this question hard. But in general, I start off trying to draft a team that essentially gets a mid-score across most rating apps. Like, I want youth, I want value. I'm trying to get edges at every position, and I'm looking for upside. Don't get me wrong, but I'm mostly building them through value and a solid starting lineup. By year 3, I mostly have a studs and duds approach. That's broadly how it works for me. And I don't care about my depth so much. And it goes to the what I need on a week-over-week basis. In season, you can see a lot more of what is good and what isn't bad and what works out in a rookie class and what doesn't. And you just start working your way into that. I think increasingly through Dynasty, you're trying to create more of your roster spots taking up with ever starts. Like more Mahomes, more Jeffersons, more George Kittles, honestly, is on that list for me. And I'm okay burning draft capital and depth value to do that over time, while still trying to maintain my value, not just in players, but have a few draft picks here and there. So I'm not, just dead if my players get injured, because that used to happen to me a lot. So yeah, I don't know the person to ask. As far as overvaluing stud players, if they're doing that, you do the opposite, which would lead you more into the typically, on average, the way I tend to play Dynasty, which I wouldn't say ever be like me, but It works. It's a solid way of playing.
So what I would do, Scribbles, is figure out what they value and what they undervalue. And so if they're overvaluing, and it depends on how many managers in your league too. If you're in a 12-team league and it's only like 2 or 3 managers that are overvaluing their non-stud players and whatever, like don't trade with them. That's fine. If it's your entire league, they've got to be undervaluing something if they're overvaluing their bench players. So trade your bench players and get picks. And then in 2 years, you have all of those bench players because you made the picks. And all of a sudden you've turned it around on them. Like that's what and you may end up getting stud players with those picks, because picks can, all of a sudden become Terry McLaurin in the 3rd round, or Darnell, not that Darnell Mooney's a stud, but he had a pretty good year to start, but he was a 5th round rookie pick. Like that's what I would do, is figure out what they're undervaluing and attack that.
You're right, because if they're undervaluing depth, but it's all Michael Pittman's, and Deontay Johnson's pretty good, because they're going for the younger players that are depth, right, for example. Whereas if they're undervaluing the older players, which have better ceilings because career arc's not age, then you get Amari Cooper and Deontay Johnson. And Zach's right. It's exactly how they're valuing it that matters there. So just ignore everything I said. Nicholas, I want to trade Aaron Rodgers to a contender for Trey Lance. Okay. I had the 101 this year and won't be in the contention this year. What is Trey Lance's value? It should be probably mid to late first. That's how I would value it. That's too much, but that's kind of how I want to get it out if I'm not trading for exact first, which is the way I'd go with Trey Lance, because no one wants to give this year's first up for Trey Lance because Brock Purdy maybe. So Kyler Murray would be the first owner I'd look at. Oh, it actually depends what the Trey Lance owner has. Go look at who their depth quarterback is. If they have Goff, you're getting a lot of that first value back. So what else can you add? How else can you balance that trade? That's how I'd go about it. I want that kind of value. Wait. I'm doing this backwards. What's Trey Lance's value? What's Aaron Rodgers' value? It's about the same thing.
Yeah.
So no, okay, I'm good. And I'll go look at their roster and try and get a quarterback in return plus a second. Or depending on what they have, you can balance it a whole bunch of different ways. But that's the value I'm looking for.
But Lance and Rodgers are pretty even.
Equal.
Yeah.
Pretty even.
If you can get something thrown in on Lance, like if the whoever rosters Lance is reading all of the snippets that say Lance is never going to play ever again, which he may not, like who knows, but
you might squeeze a second in.
Yeah, you might be able to get something.
Because if you're not asking for a first, you can squeeze you get a second. You just something to trade with someone else for something else. And you've done a pretty good job, a pretty good building trade there, even if Lance doesn't work out. I think because your points are going to be low, which is going to improve your picks in general. So you're getting the edge there too. Najee had some Frank issue too.
I'd forgotten about that because he played with a plate in his shoe for the first 6 or 8 weeks. Not a great.
I don't know. I mean, I appreciate the sentiment here, Genji, but I mean, roster running backs, why not? But yeah, he's more that than the other thing. Trevor Fields for Kyler. Yeah.
Plus what?
At least a first.
If you're, I mean. Man, that would be ridiculous. That would be nice. If your team is not competitive and you were able to get Kyler plus you almost at this point Fields is probably almost the first over Kyler.
Yeah.
In consent, like in the hive mind. I don't know that necessarily So man, if you could get Kyler plus a first for Fields and increase your first for next year, all of a sudden you're kind of the bull of the woods going into 2024. But
Gavin, one of two. What are your thoughts on QB hoarding? I don't have any direct thoughts. This is very, very viable. You can definitely do it in Dynasty. The quarterbacks are still underrated. It wasn't my intention, but I moved from Walker plus Olave for Lamar, AJ Dillon plus Zappi for Cousins. Solid. Now I have Lawrence, Lamar, Russ, and Cousins. I think it's a fine way to go. And again, they're all in the category of those are the guys that are going to have jobs for the next few years.
Yeah.
And again, I actually score points because Cousins is a perpetual top 12. Russ could get back to those ways next year. I'll stock up value any way a league lets me, if it lets me, especially if I get value and points. That's awesome. Yeah. Play your league, not Dynasty, Daniel Jones is an average QB.
Daniel Jones is an average NFL quarterback.
I think he's been below average for most of his career, but last year he was significantly above average.
But he's a good
fantasy averages out to average.
Yeah, it's the Eli Manning thing.
I ended up with him in one of the unusually, I don't do a lot of new drafts anymore, 3 leagues that I added this offseason, and it's just because everyone thinks this. He was just low, and I was like, it's a quarterback, at least 1 year, pretty good starter. I mean, at a certain point, it's like Najee Harris. I'm not drafting him over CMC. I'm not drafting him over Patrick Mahomes, but at a certain point, it's fine. Average QB is fine. And he's actually one of the ones that's got the 5-year contract, even if he only plays half of it.
Yeah.
Gavin, 2 of 2. I need some wide receiver upgrades, always. Smith, Pittman, Godwin, Hopkins, Bateman, Moore, Gallup. Yeah, you got some tearing up you could do. Do I hold my expectations till competitors realize the Cars, Jordan Love's, Tannehill type owners worry. I mean, it depends what trades you can get. Let me see, what else did you have? You had the quarterback stuff, right? So Cousins.
Yeah, so he traded Olave and Walker to get Lamar Jackson and Dillon and Zappi for Cousins. I love the Dillon and Zappi for Cousins. The Walker and Olave for Lamar, I get that you got Lamar, but you gave up quite a bit to get him on a team that had a bunch of quarterbacks.
Yeah. Which makes me think you should explore options to get. Lawrence is really hyped right now. If there's anyone in your league, and he should be, he's good and he's young, he's going to be top 12 for years to come. But you can sometimes squeeze the juice out of a trade because of that. So Lawrence is the one that stands out to me. But the only way you do it is if you upgrade your wide receiver core to Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. And personally, I'm okay getting that second tier with Waddle, AJ Brown, CD Lamb. Like, those are the guys that you want. That's the next thing to do with this wide receiver core. Outside of that, it's fine. You want more of those guys. And where you have so many quarterbacks, you could do a lot trading away Lawrence without getting one in return.
But also, Gavin, to that point, like, don't settle on a trade or for a trade right now. Like, don't sell low because I do think that in the season, if you have 4 solid starting quarterbacks, like four of the top 15, which you probably do. I mean, you've got Lamar, Lawrence, and Cousins. There's 3 of the top 12. And if we're assuming Russ comes back and is anywhere near Russ, you have 4 of the top 15. That means that there are other teams that don't have quarterbacks, and eventually they will kowtow to you.
Yeah.
I mean, they will. And so
when you're talking about such a high valued thing, you just don't trade if you can't get a great one.
Yeah, that's it.
Outside of that, what's your first look like? So you're a fairly competitive roster with deep quarterbacks and good wide receivers. Can I add my first to Pittman and get Amon-Ra St. Brown? Like, that's a way of tearing up as well. But that's where you start spending your draft capital, which, again, a lot of my builds end up doing, betting on what I think is more certain than anything else. But it's also a risky gamble. Dynasty, you got to balance risk reward while trying to balance points per game and value. And just based on what I know of your roster, deep starting quarterback, solid wide receiver core, so you're competitive. So you either need to get a lot more competitive or start shopping for more value in some other way. And I would lean getting competitive. Go explore Kittle, go explore Amon-Ra St. Brown, go explore Chase, Jefferson. But only trade someone like Lamar or Lawrence away if you're getting a really good trade. Outside of that, it's about what your league mates want. I don't think, like Zach was just saying, they're probably not going to give you a great trade for Cousins or any of the others that you rostered right now. So you're probably in a holding pattern. But that's the type of things I might explore until the season turn up. Try not to trade fatigue your league mates. But playing with too much hope. No, I think you're always trying to keep an eye on what you need to do to improve your roster and ideas you have at this point in the year to try to do that. Most times the answer is there's not much for me to do right now, but you should continually reassess. And you're right, this wide receiver core could do with some upgrades. There are only a few ways of trying to exploit that or trying to do that in Dynasty right now or at any time. So, no, I think it's right to consider, but that goes to Zach saying a lot more trades are going to be available in season and me saying don't do it just to do it. Like, you got to get a great trade for trade a great thing, you know. Daniel Jones is average. I think he's below average in many ways, but his contract's above average. His points last year are above average. Average is out to average. That's fair. And James Tucker. Overpaid for Kyler Murray in a start 8-12 team Superflex. Bateman, a 24 second, a 225 first. That's where it's an overpay. And then you are 26 first. Where that's so far out, it doesn't do too much to imbalance the trade, but you're already kind of at the limit. So, yeah. I now have a QB room of Herbert, Murray, Ridder, and Jones. I would explore Ridder and Jones trades, to be honest with you. But Jones is going to be easy in season to Zach.
Is it Mac or Daniel? Because if it's Daniel Jones, you're fine anyway. Like Herbert and Daniel Jones is a great quarterback room, and you're competing. If it's not Daniel Jones and it's Mac Jones, then you may have an issue.
And Ritter's one of those quarterbacks like Jordan Love where I would trade what I can get in my league right now because I don't think it's going to get better than right now in any league because I don't think the season's going to help. So, like, whatever it's worth in your league, I would try and improve your roster some other way or get some of that draft capital back from someone else. Todd Bradmaker, why are you down on J.K. Dobbins? I'm not down on J.K. Dobbins particularly. I didn't think I was. And if he is, and if it is because he plays with a running QB, how does that differ from Jonathan Taylor's situation? A lot to say about that comparison. You're right, though. I do tend to think that rushing quarterbacks limit at least one skill position, and it's typically running back more than anything else. But J.K. Dobbins is a very talented player on a very good team, I think. So I like him, but you're probably right to say I'm lower than a lot of people. Like John Hogue. I've heard a lot of people, very smart, very good Dynasty players, saying they love J.K. Dobbins. I don't see love in his range of outcomes for me. So I'll take it. Yeah, I kind of hate him a little bit. But to be fair, I have good expectations for him. Moving from there, Zach gave you a second there to summarize some of the things you didn't, because I really
Dobbins don't like is he's fine, but to compare him to Jonathan Taylor, that there has never been a comparison between those two players. Like there isn't. He's not going to command the carries that Jonathan Taylor commands. He never has throughout his college career, throughout his professional. Like he's not going to. And part of what you liked about J.K. Dobbins coming out of college was the fact that he is a dual threat player. Playing with a running quarterback takes a little bit of the wind out of the sails of a dual threat running back, because when a quarterback gets in trouble, who's not a running quarterback, their first instinct is, oh, I got to check down. I got to get rid of the ball to the running back in the flat. A running quarterback, their first instinct is, I'm going to run. And so I think you end up missing out a little bit on that passing upside. Now, Jonathan Taylor has been a decent pass catcher, but he's never seen more than 51 targets in a season. And I don't see that being as much of a boon for his fantasy production as J.K. Dobbins. And so to me, the situation is different because the players are different. And Jonathan Taylor's just a better running back.
From my perspective, comparing a rookie quarterback who hasn't done anything yet to a proven talent like Lamar Jackson is just phenomenally an unfair comparison. We don't know how much he's going to start. Don't know if he's going to start. Don't know if he can have success as Lamar Jackson. He puts too much on his shoulders, despite the draft capital, to be honest with you. The other thing is, Jonathan Taylor is a quintessentially different prospect than J.K. Dobbins. We've always liked J.K. Dobbins as a value, like a talented guy in a good situation with upside, because it's running back and those things can add up to some wonderful things. One, it didn't when it was healthy. Gus Edwards always took volume. And then you've got everything Zach just said about Lamar Jackson. Like top 24, he's just limited to a top 15, shall we say, running back ceiling. More often, if we ran the simulation 10 times in a row, he would get top 15, running back 13 to 15, a lot more often than he'd get running back 1 to 8, which is where it starts mattering that there's an upside rank. And Jonathan Taylor, on the other hand, the reverse is true because of the factors we just mentioned. Like, again, we've people hype values, and then other people, I think it's easy to get locked in our heads. Therefore, Jonathan Taylor upside, and he does. He's a person in the real world. I mean, people are capable of always doing what someone else hasn't done, but the best thing I think we can do in Dynasty is look at what happens more often than not. Look for values, sure, based on that range of outcomes, but not running it all the way out to what if he hits that 1 percentile outcome, or at least not paying for that. Right now, his ADP is fine. I'd be very happy starting J.K. Dobbins as running back 2. Hot. He'd be a great running back 1 for most of my teams, but that's because that's not where I'm expecting most of my points to come from, at least straight off the bat. Hopefully that answers some of what you might have been wondering about. Andrew Carlson, 12-team, 1 QB, PPR start 8. Would you trade Aaron Jones and a 25 first and another 25 first for JSN? Yes, sir. Oh, also a second and a fourth, but yeah, I think so. It's a high trade for a guy who hasn't played. I tried to trade JSN on a team that I've got him where I'm building, just to give you a heads up. And Dynasty Outhouse, no one better on value, offered me a backup running back and a 25 first. So you probably overpaid a little bit here. Personally, I believe in JSN, and that's where I'll take my risk if I have to on a rookie profile. So.
The one nice thing is it's one quarterback, so those firsts aren't quite as valuable. And JSN is a top 3 pick this year. So again, I don't mind it as much. It's still a little bit of an overpay, but I'd rather have JSN.
Yeah,
you're probably you're losing the deal this year.
Definitely.
Like Aaron Jones is going to score more than JSN probably,
and then the guy is going to be looking at 225 first, thinking he did pretty well. So and he will have. But you're going all in on I don't know, but maybe he's a boat, and I think he is. I think he could sell you somewhere eventually. Joanna, Joe, Pete, for wide receivers who are partially injured or drafted low, is targets per route run a more accurate indicator of future success? And under what circumstances is yards per route run less accurate, less volume, by the way? Like mostly players in second 2 wide receiver sets. I think I've seen some dives on wide receivers in 2 or 3 wide receiver sets. Mostly from a retweet Adam Harstead did by a guy called Tage. I forget his at. I retweeted it. It was really interesting. Yeah, there can be different expectations for both based on the sets they're running. I haven't dug into that data because I don't have 2 and 3 wide receiver set columns, basically. As for the other stuff, I can speak to it a little bit. Target yards per route run is a context stat. How deep your ADOT is matters. Also, how much you're running in the slot versus how much you're running outside, which probably speaks to what type of routes you're running. Also affects what your expectations should be in yards per route run. I don't know how deep you want to go. Personally, I just use ADOT or slot rate. And the closer you are to the line of scrimmage, the lower your yards per route run should be expected. That's just less air under the ball. That's a fairly easy one. And further down, the more air under the ball. And so the higher expectation as well. It's the same with slot and low and high slot rates, but I find combining them to be pretty useful for rookies, and I imagine the same works for the NFL. As far as targets per route run and lower draft capital, disappointing rookies that miss time, I can't find commonalities between the group that succeed after that point. Outside of the majority of times, it's Adams, it's Chris Godwin. They had phenomenal draft capital and rookie profiles to back it up. Especially ones that continued success after maybe a one-year wonder type deal, like a Preston Williams. So that's why I was saying before, like the only thing I can find to really rely on for those things is sometimes you just have to go all in on the other history that they have put up in college. That's all I've got. I can't find like if you're lower drafted or if you're playing in a smaller sample and you are injured, then that's why you miss time. Your targets per route run should be X. Because sometimes it's George Pickens. That could honestly be just a congested target situation. If you've got Deontay Johnson, the target getter of the NFL right now, you should probably earn less targets per route run as a rookie. I think it's a more context-based stat in that regard as well. In fact, that's one of the ways I think that it may be underrated, but I haven't dug in too far. CeeDee Lamb had Amari Cooper. George Pickens, potentially, even though I'm not particularly in on that, had Deontay Johnson. I think, especially in those specific situations, rookies, especially if they miss time, low drafted, whatever else, on thicker depth charts where there's more target competition, I think we can have less expectation of either routes run or targets per route run because there's just a harder time competing. I think that's a fair thing to look for, but I can't say that every disappointing rookie had that in common because from what I can find out, they didn't. So I think essentially you're trying to put it into context, which is why I think George Pickens is a hold, not a sell. If he didn't have Deontay Johnson, I'd be more keen on saying get rid of George Pickens. And while I do think he disappointed, like I don't think he's going to blow up this year with one-hand catches. Everything Zach says seems accurate to me about the situation and his expectation. And from what he said about the evaluation of the team situation and the player, I do think he could do well again at some point if the team situation clears up or something else happens, because that rookie season was good enough with Deontay Johnson and Pat Freiermuth on the depth chart to think that his lower targets per route run, that might just be the CeeDee Lamb Amari Cooper thing. And again, there's no threshold I'm using for that. That's just me kind of giving an opinion on how his stats compare to past players in that situation. And that's the way I would go about looking at it. Just make reasonable assumptions instead of trying to looking for thresholds. Those disappointing players don't have a lot in common, as far as I can tell, at least the ones you're chasing. Again, Adams, Godwin are the two big ones. I think if you go a little further back, who was the other guy that stood out to me? There's like a Andre Johnson or something who had a relatively below average season, but probably not Andre Johnson. I can't remember. I said it on the episode I did about this. Anyway, those are my thoughts about it. That disappointing group, missed time or not, I can't say, oh, as long as they get a 20% target for route run, you're fine. Some do that, some don't. And I can't say, as long as they've got Amari Cooper or a 25% target, some had that, some didn't. And there doesn't seem to be any clear way of grouping them. And part of the problem is such a small sample of breakouts. 27% when breakouts themselves are fairly uncommon. Then you're looking for the unicorns of the unicorns. And so there's not a lot of ways to hunt unicorns based on the fact that not a lot of hunters have successful experience. But I think I'm just boring everyone else right now. But Joe, those are really good questions that I don't have definite answers to, but they're definitely good questions. Sorry. Henry, how do you feel about Lance? Go down with the ship? I didn't get in on the ship, but I am interested in getting some late tickets, just so I can, say I saw the Titanic before it sank. This year's rookie draft, like that was one idea I had to get out of the Richardson pick. If I couldn't trade down or get another quarterback, I thought, based on the way ADP was, if I could get Lance plus more draft capital, much more than a first at the time, that was interesting. But if you've got Lance right now, apart from the moves that we tried to come up with you earlier, I think you're just trying to hope that a lot of the off-season buzz is just off-season buzz. They did invest a lot of draft. You're into narratives. We don't know. And so the upside is probably in keeping him at this point. Zach, do you feel differently? Like,
no,
I want Brock Purdy to start almost, but I don't know. I have no idea.
It's a value proposition, but Brock Purdy is going to play if he's healthy in San Francisco. Like they've been really upfront and honest about that.
They have continuously said it. So
not only did they say it, but they also opted for the surgery that would bring Purdy back instead of going the route where it would take longer to rehab him. So they've been very upfront about this. So to me,
that's fair.
Lance it's a value proposition. Like if you can get him for a second round pick, or you can get him for Aaron Rodgers on a team that you're not competing like somebody else did earlier in our chat, like fine. Like I'm not going to be upset about rostering Trey Lance because we know what he can be in fantasy. But
I think I misspoke then. I said we don't know. I think we should expect him not to start based on what you're saying.
I don't think that you roster Trey Lance with the idea that he's going to be the quarterback in San Francisco this year. If you do, I think you're a little bit foolish. But I also think that he's fallen enough in value that rostering him is not, he's not unattainable at this point. He's going off the board at QB. I'd have to find him. I'm scrolling somewhere. He's here. I swear. 23, QB 23. And so to me at that point, that's fine. He's in the range of an early second round pick. I'll spend that to get a quarterback who potentially could be top 6. Not that he's going to be, but he's got the ability through his legs. We've seen it. We've seen him do it. So, if it's a $1 lotto ticket to win $1 million, fine. If it's a $20 lotto ticket, maybe I'm not doing it. If it's a $500 lotto ticket, I'm definitely not doing it. So it's always been a value proposition with Lance.
And I'll own myself in the other direction, just so I'm not saying I always get it right here. I'll point out the downside to this. This is why I play quarterback and tight end this way. I want the guys I know. And outside of that, I'll wait and see and let everyone else make the high value bets. And so, like, I didn't get in on Justin Fields last year. I didn't get in on Trevor Lawrence last year, though, which was bad. I was in on. I'm in on rookie picks in that Mahomes and even Herbert, players that you can just draft for a single first round pick in your super flex draft. Makes solid sense. It made sense to draft Lance that way. But after rookie drafts, I'm not betting that these guys turn into Patrick Mahomes or even Trevor Lawrence. I'm waiting to see who they are. Now, the downside to that is you restrict yourself from the access, right? I didn't believe Dak Prescott as a counter to this. I was like, I'm going to have to see him do that for a season, okay? But those that went in on that believed that Dak was really going to take that job, that Romo was going to retire, and then we'd have Dak Prescott for the next 2 years. They solid weren't. I lost that opportunity. But again, I didn't make the mistake. Like,
it's cost though. You could
line I've come across is I want to make fewer of the mistakes that I've made, much more than I want to concentrate on making every good decision everyone else has ever made. But and that's the way I found to limit my mistakes.
But again, it's to me, Peter. Yes, you're limiting your mistakes, but I don't mind making mistakes.
Oh, you've got to make them somewhere. But we're gonna make mistakes. Yeah.
But if I'm not paying anything to make them, so again
draft first a rookie pick.
Yeah, but a first no, like I don't want to spend like when people were saying Lance was a top 3 rookie pick when he came out and he was drafted by I'm out. I'm like, that's not something because my evaluation on Lance was
and that's fair because you have a quarterback evaluation process.
A little bit.
I did Lance the same way I did Richardson, but also, to be fair, Justin Fields.
Yeah.
In that I was like, I believe you, but I don't know with quarterback evaluation. But if I'm just drafting him as a super flex rookie pick, it's fine. But if I can find a way out, I will. But I'll take him if I do. So yeah, again, I completely agree. I just don't have a solid quarterback evaluation, especially for those lower sample players. But I think we're on the same page. But you have a better quarterback. You have a quarterback evaluation process that you can use.
Wow. I mean, it's still playing darts blindfolded in a hurricane. But yeah, I mean,
yeah. But yeah, Henry pointing out it's not 100% win. I'm not saying that's the way you should always do it, but that's the best way I've come up to make better decisions more often for my teams. I happily draft Richardson with a top 3 pick this year if I can't find a really good trade to get out of it, like you should do with every draft pick. And I would have with Lance. So if you've got Lance from that, like, you took a shot. I get it. Don't worry about it. But if you want to follow Zach's quarterback evaluation, you had an edge there. He seemed to do pretty well with Lance, turns out. And he likes Richardson a lot more than you would say.
Yeah. I mean, but again, it's that same, like, if we're doing straight up evaluation, it was Bryce Young, Stroud, then Richardson. To me, Richardson's legs give you that big bump upside, and if you're gonna make a bet, that's fine. Now you make that bet understanding the same risk is there with Lance, and so to me, it's you're looking at your team and you're looking at your risk tolerance and you're evaluating what missing will do to your team. And if your team is at a point where you can't afford to miss on Richardson, I think Bryce Young is a better bet.
That's the way I lean in this. Like I'll take Stroud and Young over him, but like a top 3 pick, fine with it. Outside of Deshaun Robinson.
Yep.
And so Henry, you didn't ask about Richardson to be clear, but I'm trying to give you an idea on why I don't have an answer to what I do, because I'm not in this situation, and it's because I'm specifically trying to avoid it. But if you want someone that can help you, Zachary's got a quarterback process. Another person I listened to in the draft for quarterback evaluation, Travis May. If Travis May says that Trevor Lawrence is, if Trevor Lawrence isn't a top 12 quarterback, then we don't know what one looks like. So that made me very comfortable drafting him wherever I had to, because it's super flex in the value. Like there are some people who do better at some things that I haven't found a way of being better at than anyone. So I just value their process. I'm not trying to pretend I have all the answers, just find the best way. The answers that I do have, I try and improve. And then I try and make up for the ones that I don't have. And that's why I'm not in the Lance situation. But to be clear, that's also why I never got the benefit of that. And why I'm questionable on Richardson, who has more upside in this draft than anyone else. So, like, you limit your extremes. But, you know, it's true. You don't get the big pluses. You don't get the big mind at that one position. Outside of if Travis May is all over it, if Zach's all over it, like this guy's real, Pete. If Zach was a little less, it's the rushing upside, and all about what he saw on tape that suggests he could be Lamar Jackson, passing wise. I'd be like, oh, cool, yeah, sure. I trust these guys' evaluations. I'm all in.
And that to me is the difference between. So if you listen to me talk about Jalen Hurts a few years ago,
that's one that you said, and I was like, okay. All in, let's go.
And that's the difference. And Lamar Jackson was that way too. Like when Lamar Jackson came out and there was the big debate whether or not he was a quarterback or whether he was a wide receiver, and Bill Polian was like, I watched Lamar Jackson and I watched him in his first 2 years be an amazing runner. And then in his junior year at Louisville, you saw him transition into a player who was reading coverages, was reading zones, was not using his legs as the first option, was sitting back there and making the read. Okay, now I'm going to run. And once he started doing that, it was pretty obvious that he was going to be just incredible. And the same thing with Hurts. Like Hurts was so underrated as a passer in college. You watch him make throws and you're like, and Kyle asked me, he's like, is he going to be Lamar Jackson? And I said no, because he doesn't run like Lamar Jackson, but he runs like Cam Newton and may throw even a little better than that. And that's what, like, obviously Cam Newton never had the weapons that Hurts has right now. I mean, with AJ Brown and Smith and Goddard and like that team, and adding Swift in there, that is just filthy. But like, Richardson is not at that same level. Lance was not at that same level. So you're taking a little bit more of a risk to me, because that's the legs are what they've got, and you're hoping they become the more well-rounded passer. But
again, I will outright admit, not a scout, I don't know. I'm just a dynasty player. The reason I have running back, wide receiver, and tight end evaluations is because I've been trying to explain, I cannot find a way of making good decisions without having something you can believe in to say this player is good in the good group or the disappointing group. You have to get better at it, because we will have misses, and that's where I'll take my risk. But that is one area. There's no other choice. You can't historically trend or threshold your way out of a rookie evaluation. You have to, and if you can't, which I have not found a way of doing it at quarterback, I just borrow someone I think's good at it. And that I'm not a scout. I don't know. But when impossible, I just find someone I think I can trust. I would highly recommend anything Travis says about quarterbacks specifically. Everything else, I don't agree with him, obviously. But rookie quarterbacks, I pretty much take what he says. Zach's really good at it too, relative to playing darts in a hurricane, obviously.
Blindfolded.
I used to love Sean Slavin. Sean Slavin was a metrics guy. I think he still does some content, but I think he's moved on a little bit. Unfortunately, we lost him to the fact that this doesn't pay any money and takes a lot of effort. Slavin22 on Twitter, though, he's still worth a follow. That went going really
Joe.
deep into some very simple questions here. But there you go. Chris Stanley took over Orphan in a 16-team 4 passing touchdown start 9. Only quarterback was Lamar, which is not so bad. Got Stafford for Cup stack, but still bad. Trade Stafford, Cup for Watson. Which Watson or hold?
It's got to be
Deshaun
Deshaun.
Watson?
It's got to be Deshaun.
Yeah. I think I'd just ride Stafford Cup.
Yeah, I mean, if Stafford is healthy, he's fine, and Cup is more than fine. Like if Stafford and Cup are both healthy, Cup is a hammer at wide receiver. So,
same answer. For what, Genji? Because if it's a second, I don't think you're going to find anyone disagreeing with you. If it's a first, you're going to get that trade in half the leagues. So, like a buy for me is something you could expect to get more than 50% of leagues if you send that offer out. That I feel pretty confident I would send out in more situations. Like just from when I get asked the question. So I'm interested to see what you would, because you're pretty sharp, Genji. What would you buy for? Is a first fine for you? Chris Stanley, playoff teams get number one pick.
The highest points from non-playoff team gets the number one pick.
So hurting his points doesn't matter.
So he wants to hurt his points just enough to miss the playoffs.
Just enough. Yeah, try gaining that. That's it. That's a good context, so I appreciate it. Brendan, 12-team Superflex half-point PPR start 9. Give Lance Loves a 224 first. Receive Trevor Lawrence and Mike Evans. Yeah, Trevor Lawrence is worth that. So Mike Evans is a nice. That's pretty good. 2 firsts for Lawrence and Lance. 2 firsts and Lance for Lawrence. Fair offer. Better than fair, actually. And you're getting, yeah. I'd take the Lawrence side here.
Yes. I'm with you.
Way to make me sound wordy.
No. Like I would just you said it. It's like the Abby Hoffman and Forrest Gump. You said it all, man.
Joe, back and forth this week. Appreciate you, Joe. Can you guys just give me a heuristic to follow? Yeah, I actually have a list of them somewhere because Adam's always smarter than me and ahead of me, and I was like, that's a way of playing. I wrote them down somewhere. Could I find the list? I did a whole podcast on it, but type heuristic Adam Harstead into Google, and he's got a thread somewhere. But let's see. I think you wrote some down, didn't you? Let's see. Dynasty is about changing a roster, not creating it, is my first heuristic. The first year is the easiest to win. Dynasty, draft for talent, trade for need. Age is overrated, value is not. I think I'd trade that to a career arc, is not now. Future first, greater than depth. Sleepers suck. Same note. Players are never cheaper than in the rookie draft. I stand by that one. QBs are cheap in the startup. That's another one I follow. And these are general ideas. Let's see. It's about the offer, not the timing. Okay. My thoughts have advanced on that since. Just to the draft, know your league. Studs are greater than starters. I stand by that one. Consistency is a myth, which I definitely stand by. Situations change. That's actually my number one heuristic at this point. Good players help other players. My number 2 heuristic at this point. Undrafted free agents matter. I also have a list of ideas here that I was working on turning into something. But yeah, those are the ones I wrote down in an episode on once. Zach, I think you did this recently, didn't you?
Yeah. My last episode of the Dynasty Dummies podcast, although I said it was rules, but same idea. Heuristics and rules of thumb are very like the same thing. And I said simplify things. Like that to me is if you can break things down. This game, we try to make this game super complicated. And if you can break it down into simpler things, then that's a pretty it's one of my rules. So like I only have 2 rules in life. And the reason why I only have 2 rules in life is because simplify things was the first one I came up with. And so my 2 rules in life are don't do stupid stuff and make it look like you've done it before. And if you do those 2 things, in terms of fantasy football, Peter, you already mentioned it, but that's the Russ Fisher draft for value, trade for need. And I think I even kind of split hairs on that. I like to draft for what I consider talent and then trade for need, but value and talent are intertwined. the picks are a replenishable asset. So you get picks every single year. And so you can spend them like currency knowing that you're going to get picks again. And that's part of my buy things on credit. So if I'm in the second or third round of a draft or a rookie draft, and there's a player that I want that's on the board, I will send this year's next round pick and next year's. So if it's a second round pick, I'll send this year's third and next year's second to get that specific second. And so something like that, trim the fat is one I like, because there are so many players that we hope and think and dream that they're going to actually be something, and 90% of those aren't. And it's really hard because a lot of those are my guys. A lot of those are the John Kellys or the who is the Corey Coleman, like that type. I've heard people like N'Keal Harry, and continue to roster, and it's so trimming the fat is a something I think that if you can be really, really kind of rational about your back end of your roster, you can make some great gains that way. Talent over situation. That's the AJ Brown. Peter, I heard you talk about the AJ Brown rule, but it's that I think is really a valuable lesson in people are hating on Jordan Addison because he's behind Justin Jefferson. He's beside Justin Jefferson, and that's a good thing. And your rookie picks, don't treat your rookie picks as late, even though you expect them to be late because you're going to be good. Things happen in season, so when you're trading them, don't trade them as if they are late. So there are just a few things, Joe, that I talked about on the last podcast, and I try to kind of use as guides as we go through this.
I'm live editing my heuristics list because I do like to maintain it. Again, it's a solid thing to have in your back pocket if you ever need to default to just basics, which is always, that's what we've got on the clock, to be honest with you. And seriously, Adam Harstead, heuristics into Twitter, you'll find a thread that'll entertain you for the length of that thread, like start to finish.
Yeah.
Gavin Ferguson, I feel Arizona plays Kyler if they can. Not playing Kyler would be like Cleveland not playing Watson at the end of the year. You don't rush him back, but with a few new offensive system, why not climb?
Watson was not hurt, first of all. And Arizona has a chance to be really bad and get another early pick. What do you gain by bringing Kyler Murray in? And again, I know you said you don't rush him back, but how do you know you're not rushing him back? It just, to me, if they're bad, it doesn't make sense to bring in Kyler Murray and win 2 or 3 games at the end of the season from a front office standpoint. Now, as a coach, if Kyler Murray is healthy enough to play and is on the active roster, yeah, you're playing him. But if I'm the front office, there's no way if they're 1-9 or 1-10, and there's no way I'm signing off on bringing him back in. And you can also get acclimated to the offensive system by studying the offensive system. Like that's a thing, and doing walkthroughs and reps and practice and that sort of thing. So, but.
There you go. Because he's getting traded.
That's Lance. And he may. And that's a win, Genji. If Lance gets traded, that's a win. Did you say I'm frozen?
I just remembered.
Oh, Josh.
No, Josh
I said that.
That's the name I was forgetting.
I said that back when you were talking, but you didn't listen.
I don't listen. That's my main problem. How come you hate Christian Watson? Again, Peter, touchdown regression. No, I don't. I think I'm above average on Christian Watson according to DLF ranks, for example. He had a good rookie year in the way I measure it. But Zach's right. If I'm looking for red flags on a good rookie year, and remember, only 36 to 37% of people that cross good thresholds, and he did, go on to be those players we're really chasing. So there's a reason to trim the back end of your darlings that have good rookie seasons, even though, yeah, I'd rather him than Dotson. I'd rather him than a lot of players. That's the thing that I can find that's more common and more profile in that group. It's just high touchdown production.
Well, and
that's why.
That was the thing. Like
everything else is trying to justify and talking about 70% of snaps and per game thresholds, and maybe I'll throw out a Romeo Dubs take, but that's bottom line. That's why.
Watching Christian Watson on film coming out before last year, I said he was the hardest evaluation I had because he finished as a top 10 wide receiver in that class for me. But what he did poorly, he did really poorly. And what he did well, he did exceptionally well. I haven't seen very many players get over the top as consistently as Christian Watson. And you saw him do that last year. But that's what he does. And so all of the efficiency metrics and all the area, like everything that people are going to point to like maybe he can become something else, are all going to be great. But I don't think that he has the ability to do the other things to drive enough volume to be really, really valuable to your fantasy team. And I'd rather, again, when everybody was all in on Christian Watson because he had, 7 or 8 touchdowns in a stretch, that's when I would be hopping out.
I just found a bunch of the things I added or had in my ideas section, and I said them better that time. Like I just had one about disappointing sophomores, but I think this one's better. That player who sucked probably sucks. Sorry, I like Past Pete. He's funny sometimes. Joe, sorry. I hope that helps. Kyler's a buy, man. I can't stress it enough. In Dynasty, hands down. I think he's my highest ranking value, but outside of Swift, maybe. Like, with only grudging respect to I don't want people to throw too much and then blame too much in value at Swift, moved him down in my ranks because I had him ranked in the top 12 running backs. And I was like, I don't want anyone to trade 2 first and then get mad at me. Like, you don't have to, so don't do it. But, like, Swift is the other one that's pretty clear to me. Good evening, gents. Mr. Mole. 12-team, 1 QB, PPR, start 7. Ooh, stud roster. Got it. Give London and Rashad White, get Olave. No.
Oh, I'd rather have Olave.
Okay.
You are a lot higher on Rashad White's potential than I am.
Oh no, this is the Olave in London, same value to me.
See, to me, Olave's better. He's always been better. Okay. He's in a better situation. So I get to bet on talent and situation. I'd rather do that.
Their rookie profiles came up fairly close for me. They do very different things, especially since we've seen London change his role slightly when he got to the NFL, so that's fair. And I hate his team, so don't get me wrong. Olave's probably plus odds for points, especially this year. But again, London's profile crossed a good threshold for me, and he didn't have that high touchdown thing for Watson, and I stick to basics when I can. But I wouldn't be surprised that if I take an L on that, because 37% and 37%. He's probably a darling that could be trimmed, and I get saved mostly from Treylon Burks being slightly below that, and so that's mostly where I would lean, and you get extra value on that. But I would turn down this trade and keep London and Rashad White if I was rostering them. But Zach's right a lot. So 2 differing opinions. You're going to have to go with your feels. Or ask someone else. There's like a million opinions in there.
Rock, paper, scissors.
This is why we need a third. James Tucker, how do you get diehard redraft players to understand Dynasty if they are struggling? I actually have a hard time getting diehard Dynasty players to understand Dynasty because they forget their redraft roots. And redraft's going to help you out a lot more than Dynasty thinks. The way it helps is over time, that Dynasty edge is going to kick in. This goes to something I read in Adam Harstead, again, article recently, pointing out that over time, in a league that's been running 9 years, the haves become more haves and the have-nots become more have-nots. So if you're a redraft player by year 4, by year 5, you're starting to hurt. But at some point, hopefully you've picked up some of those value tendencies, had some rookie drafts, added some value elsewhere, and you're not completely tanking. But honestly, through the first 3 years, a redraft player is going to kick a lot of dynasty ass. It's that simple.
Yeah, and the way you get them to understand dynasty is to play. Like literally,
that's the only way. Yeah.
And so for context, James, 2014 was when I played my first dynasty league. That was our startup in our home league. We had heard a little bit about it. We listened to podcasts. It was a redraft league that took the leap. And my first 2 picks were Drew Brees, who was a 33-year-old quarterback at that point, and Adrian Peterson, who got suspended for the entire year. Like, those were my first 2 picks ever in Dynasty. And our entire league was a bunch of redraft players, and it was a debacle. Like, it was so bad. Like, so, wow. For context, the last pick of the entire draft was Travis Kelce. I hit that one pretty well. Yeah. But I also managed to drop Mike Evans in the middle of the year because I wanted to add a running back. And so I didn't have enough. We didn't have deep rosters at that point. So I dropped Mike Evans, rookie year Mike Evans, to pick up a running back. And it was probably like Deuce McAllister or something. It was terrible. It was just not a great pickup. So you learn by doing, and that's how you get better at it, and it's fun, especially if you got a whole bunch of guys in the same boat. You just all kind of learn together.
Outside of that, that's my content journey. I'm trying to find out what does help and then get people to agree with it, or at least try and follow it, or argue with me so that I get better. Or we get better together. And the most success I think I've had between teaching Dynasty Redraft and teaching Redraft Dynasty. For Dynasty players, I think the best way in that I found to get them to recognize the difference between just valuing value and actually chasing value is pointing out good players, good career arcs, not good ages. And pointing out that it doesn't matter how many young players you're rostering if you don't have any players that actually work out. So just because Dotson's younger than Amari Cooper does not mean there's a value opportunity there. Even though Dotson, he ran a lot of reps, you could always make a good argument. And I think it's that route. But for your question, trying to get redraft players to understand Dynasty, I think the best success I have is getting them to focus on the difference. The only difference between the two really is how you can change your roster for next season. Now, they'll point out, I don't care, I want to win and stuff like that. But if you get on that line, then you point out that more teams are more interested in more things and that kind of logic. So Olave, don't think he's going to finish top 12 this year, but he doesn't have to be more interesting to more teams for the next 12 months. Amari Cooper's going to outscore him for sure for 2 years, but more teams are going to be more interested in Olave, and he's not going to be doing bad. And in fact, by the time he gets to Amari Cooper's age, he's probably had an Amari Cooper-like career and eventually broken out into the top 12. So the earlier you can get in on that, the better. And the various, that's just an example, but thinking of it that way, it's not about, yes, Amari Cooper's going to outscore him. So is Deontay Johnson, and you're getting him later. That's great. But what if you're not winning? Then you want to change your roster for the next season, but no one wants Amari Cooper. No one wants Deontay Johnson. Everybody will have more interest in Chris Olave. And I think that route, I found the best route of explaining that you should want Deontay Johnson and Amari Cooper and Devontae Adams, for sure. But you're betting that in 3 years, you still need to be able to make roster moves or you're rebuilding. And so you have to maintain that value quotient, which is a terrible way of telling a redraft player. But you have to have things that other teams are interested in so that you can make other roster moves, because there's no more redraft. And there's no more drafts. Rookie drafts don't count for that vein. I think those are the best things I've had to try and show the difference between them, between players who have more experience in one than the other. But I mean, I'm not exactly a successful content creator, so maybe they're not the best answers. But those are the two that I think give players who have more experience in one the more immediate, better insight into the other by thinking about it along those lines. Andrew Carlson, what was your prospect profile of Tajay Spears? I can answer that. A lot of positive news out of camp, sneaky PPR play, or stay away due to ACL. And we did a whole check out the Dynasty Dummies Hootenanny. They did 3 or 4 episodes breaking down every player from 3 different perspectives from the tape. It was really interesting to listen to. Zach was part of it. That's his podcast. I did YouTube videos because I'm like young and hip. And I also have my college database pinned where you can click and you see all my ranks, and I made notes about rookie players so you can get some insight there. Too Long Didn't Read version. His numbers are fantastic, but he comes from a place in the draft, a place in college that you have to be slightly suspicious of that. But he's also a running back who landed on an interesting depth chart with a path to opportunity, and so that matters as well. I think he's probably not as good as his numbers suggest, but he definitely can get starts in Dynasty. Range of outcomes, he's one of those running backs who can have a period in his rookie year where everyone thinks he's the new James Robinson, but I don't think he really has James Robinson upside. And you're right, PPR upside, sneaky play right now based on his value. I really like him as part of that I was going to call him middle class, but that second round running back group, he's probably at the back of that for me, but he's still a really good ad in that second round. That was Too Long Didn't Read version, so I better stop saying it. Zach, what you got?
I mean, I think he's exactly what you're looking for in a third down back, where like he's got really great burst, like to the line of scrimmage. He's one of the quickest, like that initial from the point he gets the ball to the point he gets through the line of scrimmage. He's one of the quickest runners that I've seen. He has very good vision once he gets to the second level, where not only does he have good speed, but he also uses angles really well. So he'll run away from defenders using angles. He's got good long speed once he gets into that space, and he can punish teams off tackle and to the outside. The problem is he's not going to run inside very consistently. He doesn't have very good power. He's not a great short yardage back. I think sometimes he's in a hurry to go nowhere, where he like goes really fast, but the hole hasn't opened up yet. And so he ends up in traffic, and he is not a pass blocker at all. Like he gets completely lost in pass blocking, where he'll just like dip his head, like lead with his shoulder and hope that he hits somebody. So he's not a bad dart throw. He's not somebody that I'm like going out of my way to add to a roster, but man, in the early third of a rookie draft, like, yeah, whatever. It's not bad.
Yeah. I take the win. I got a third vote.
We'll revisit.
I guess. That's ominous. Receipts. Trevor Thomas H. I'm a contender. Good to know. But could use some help at running back. Okay. Which running backs would you guys be looking to grab for a 24 or 25 first? Well, I wouldn't. I'd wait till the season, especially if you're throwing first round picks around. Make sure you're a contender. Find out who the running backs that you need are. Then try and trade from them accordingly. You might find a J.D. McKissick that doesn't take a first. You never know. But we went through a slight list. Running backs that I'm interested in right now, which means a contender roster should be interested. Swift, Aaron Jones, Nick Chubb. I think they were the top of the fold results. I think Rachaad White too, but Zach's like,
oh, he's fine.
He's all
but,
like tape guy about it.
He's fine, but I don't like Rachaad White does not like make me excited like adding Swift would.
Fair enough. Earth human. Hello.
Me too.
I too am an Earth human. Where do you guys stand on Kincaid? He's gonna play. I'm worried that his college stats look good to me. Okay, the evaluation coming from those like Zach who do a little more on tape kind of a look at what they actually do, I guess, the how, is a little less excited, but I thought he looked pretty good production-wise. No, I'm not. Let me get it out. However, I'm worried he's that first round tight end trap where they always look like they have good hit rates, but they're never quite as exciting as you think. Think Noah Fant had top 12 seasons. Hasn't been great. Upside of TJ Hawkinson. That's pretty cool, but it's mostly been value. His production really hasn't been George Kittle-like, So I'm worried, but my evaluation on him is really solid. I think outside of the draft capital, he was a really heavily used receiver and did fairly well on the volume. He did excellent on the volume that he got. He looks like he was a really good receiver at the tight end position, and he's well sized, so I assume he's not just a receiver kind of a thing. He's not a Hunter. Wait, Mike Gesicki. But I'm worried that draft capital is going to make people think, therefore, he's more likely to be Kelsey. I don't think we can predict that range. It's a really difficult range to predict. So it's somewhere between Hawkinson and Noah Fant. That's where I'm at on him, and I'm pretty confident in that. But Sam Laporta, also kind of in that range, and you get him slightly later. Michael Mayer, also in that range of outcomes for me, and slightly later still. So, yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, so of the tight ends that I want to draft in this year's rookie class, it's Laporta, it's Mayer, then Kincaid, and then I'm gonna wait and get Kraft. Like those are the guys that I'm really interested in, and Kincaid's in that list, but he's a third on that list behind both Laporta and Mayer, and it's not that. I think that he's bad. I think he's very good. He can be versatile. He can be used as a blocker. He can be used as a weapon, both short and downfield. He has a very quick transition to a runner post catch, which is nice. If your tight end can add yards after the catch, that's a great thing. He actually has pretty good contact balance post catch, which means that he can take a hit and keep going. He has very good hands on throws downfield, especially, and he's pretty good in traffic. The thing that bugs me about him is he struggles to separate a lot in the mid-range area. He has a tendency to get real close to defenders against the zone and just sit. Well, if you're running a tight end out of the slot, he's got to be able to beat zone coverage. And if he can't beat zone coverage at Utah, it is a little bit of a red flag to me. And I do think he comes off his blocks way too early. And the other subtle issue is Brant Kuth, who, if you probably don't even have him in your database, but 2 years ago, he out-targeted Kincaid by like, he had 50 targets to Kincaid's 36. Or reception, sorry, not targets. And then this past year, Kuth got hurt in the second game of the season, but the first game of the season, he saw a ton of targets, and Kincaid didn't see very much. And so, yeah,
actually, by the way.
Yeah, so like Kincaid looked fine, but I think that he got elevated because of an injury to another player on his team. And so he came out of nowhere because he was kind of that second fiddle until there was an injury. And again, it doesn't take away from his production. It doesn't take away from what he can do on the field, but it just makes me a little bit more leery of a guy who didn't get on the field as much until there was an injury to the other tight end who was playing the position that he ended up, succeeding. I mean, he had 70 receptions and almost 900 yards. You can't take that away. Like, he was good. But I'd rather have Laporta and Mayer.
If we're talking deep down, since you throw out Kraft, I think Kraft's a good one. Josh Weil, I've added him in a bunch of places real deep. And I think, who's that? Brenton Strange.
Yep.
Right? Yeah. Those are two other names to know. Or maybe not. I took Kenny Yeboah a lot last year. So I like to get wild at tight end. It's a position that's kind of worth it. Zach. It's not Joanna, is it? I used to say it that way, and she said it was Johannes. So, or wait, the other way around? I don't know. Joe. Zach, my QBs are Lance, Kyler, and Love. My running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends are all elite or good. Would you just roll with these QBs, or is it too risky?
Man, I'm worried that you don't have
a starter.
Yeah. Like Love is. I'm not confident in Love. I think he starts. Like I don't think there's a. It's hard for me to see a world in which Jordan Love doesn't play the majority of this season for the Packers.
But you'd rather have Goff.
Yeah, and that I think, Peter, is kind of to your point. What I would do is go try to attack some of those undervalued quarterbacks that are actually decent in terms of production. Like, man, you might be able to get Russell Wilson for a song at this point. I mean, he was really bad. We already talked about Aaron Rodgers being about equal to Lance. I think Rodgers puts up decent production. What are you going to say?
No, I was going to say she's not asking me, but that's where I think you want to grab one that they're a little more confident in starting this year. Then you don't need to stack it up. You've got upside with Kyler and Lance. I get it. But I would go looking for what trade my league mates would get me one Goff, and I feel a lot more confident.
Yep,
that's it.
Yeah, because if you've got Goff
Rodgers and Wilson would be higher than that. That'd be great.
If you got Goff and Love, and the rest of your team is stacked, then I feel really confident. And if Lance ends up, for whatever reason, either starting in San Francisco or traded and start somewhere, then all of a sudden you're really good.
Great.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So
go find the Packers fan. For what, Genji? I'm just going to keep asking.
Agreed, though, like Kincaid has been going in the first round of rookie drafts. That's wild to me. I don't care. He shouldn't be a late first.
I wouldn't take him over a couple of the running backs, but he still comes in around 11, 12. Seems fair to me. It's fine. I mean, if it's after Quentin Johnson and Zay Flowers, and I can get Josh Downs after all of that group anyway, and I'm like,
in a super flex with any sort of tight end premium, I want Bijan, Richardson, Young, Stroud, Addison, JSN, Gibbs, Quentin Johnson, Flowers, Levis, Rashee Rice, Mims, Laporta, Mayer, and now I get to Kincaid. So now we're at
Rashee Rice down for me is like
204.
I'm not going to tell you not to, but
I'd rather have either of those guys than the tight ends. But
yeah, solid. Alex FS just finished startup draft 12 team Superflex 11 start 11 PPR 2 tight end premium. Good. No Herbert. That's his roster. I don't want to keep having to read lists of names. Sit tight or make moves to compete. I mean, always look for ways you can improve your roster. Looking over your roster right now. Running back start with Deontay Johnson? What am I reading wrong here?
No. Backup running backs. And then
it just has back.
Yeah.
Well, you're not in a hyper competitive window. You have a fine team here. I love JSN and Quentin Johnson. You built much for let's see what happens in 2023. I wouldn't be making any hyper aggressive competitive trades. So that puts me more in, as most of our team should be, what value opportunities there are. Like Rashad Bateman is interesting, but your roster doesn't need it. But if the Rashad Bateman owner in your league is like, this guy sucks, then you can get an interesting trade. I don't see anything that you particularly need to improve, except the top of that wide receiver depth chart needs to be thicker. JSN and Quentin Johnson probably rise to the top of it this year, so just hold. Do not panic on them this season. Wait till the end of the season. Don't be that guy trading them away after week 4. Your tight ends are awesome, and no need to make changes there. quarterback's the same thing. So you're looking to make a few moves if you can, either in value, adding more picks for, I don't know, Deontay Johnson, Terry McLaurin. While good on a non-elite, should I say, like your overall roster isn't built for 2023. You can explore trades with them, but honestly, I think their value is just holding. So I think you just hold it.
So with this roster, you obviously are going to need something in your superflex position, right? You're going to need a second quarterback.
Okay.
I mean, like unless you're confident starting Baker Mayfield this year.
Not confident, but it's a QB2 and it's fine. And I was just looking at his depth, like he can scream.
So what I would do is to fill that position in a 2-point tight end premium is go after Kittle and make Kittle be my QB2, because I think you can actually get Kittle cheaper than you can a quarterback, but Kittle will produce better than Baker Mayfield. And so
that's a fair point, because you've got a little extra on the back of your tight end depth, like Ingram plus, and you get Kittle, then you've got a QB2 right there in your tight end position. That's smart. Good job, Dave. Yeah.
I mean, that's typically how I play, even in startups when I'm in a heavy tight end premium. So like 175 or 2, like you can get those tight ends for less than you can quarterbacks, and they score just as much, if not more. So
if he does what Kittle does, he's easily startable compared to most top 24 quarterbacks, for example. No, this is, you're right. I talked for a long time to basically say I don't see anything that you really need to do but hold. But this is a team that could strongly benefit from adding Kittle.
And also, you've got a team that if you're competitive for the first half of the year, all of a sudden JSN and Quentin Johnston, you get that like second half rookie wide receiver bump. I think they kind of come into their own, and then you can figure out if you want to spend one of those first to get even better. So
nice. Henry says hit that like button. Thank you, Henry, because we're not going to say it. Gavin, I was leaning on holding the quarterbacks and waiting for some cheap camp blurbs.
Yeah,
that'd be fun strat or idea of how to proceed, should I say. Is DK Metcalf a buy? I've been toying with the idea. The trades I've seen seem really solid. Some of them, it's kind of been hit or miss. But I have seen some DK Metcalf trades where he should really belong in that Olave, Waddle, Wilson
Higgins
tier.
Yeah.
But he's the odd man out because no one's like, even I'm talking about Waddle, and Zach mentions him. Everyone loves CD Lamb after his last year breakout, so that I'm not even high relative to the market for the first time in 12 months. Just want to I got one right. I'm going to keep mentioning it. So, yeah, DK is actually probably the odd man out in that category. Yeah, actually, I think that's a solid recommendation there, Genji. Put it in the video or something. I'll watch it. Gavin, Pittman is showing chemistry with
that.
Anthony.
That's
that
the
kind
camp
of
hype. Yep.
Yeah.
And it's micro markets, Gavin. We talk about that a lot. Like if you,
that's what we're all waiting for, because nothing's happening, right? You're waiting for one of those.
If you can see where the hype is going to happen and get ahead of it and sell on the hype, then you win.
Like injured running backs returning, they're going to work out. They're going to get recorded working out, and then there's going to be a video of them looking really healthy and fit and full of muscles, and everyone's going to be like, "Oh, that guy's awesome." It's a pretty reliable one.
And James, that was the question of whether it was Daniel Jones or Mac Jones. You're far better off with Daniel Jones.
Blake, hi guys. I'm in a Superflex 12-team league. I have Carr and Kyler as my quarterbacks. I'm being offered a second-round pick next year. Ritter and Mixon for Kyler. Nope.
Yeah, that's light.
I would politely decline with that account.
Yeah, the second round pick is nothing. Ritter is meh, and Mixon is also meh.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Blake, I have Dalton, Mike White, and McCoy as my other. I mean, stack up depth at quarterback and quarterbacks.
I mean,
get it,
McCoy may end up playing. Like,
I mean,
but,
I'd rather roster Clayton Tune than make that trade. You know?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
James Tucker, you don't believe in Ritter? I mean, to a Jordan Love extent, he's going to start this year.
Yeah, he'll be
more talented at football than I am at anything. Yeah,
he's fine. Like, and he was the most pro-ready of the quarterbacks that came out in his class. So again, it's not that he's bad. It's just that you're looking at like QB 20. Like you're looking at Mac Jones. Like whatever, it's fine, but it's not going to help. It's not going to win you. He actually probably not even Mac Jones. I think Mac Jones.
I was going to say Mac's probably the upside.
Yeah,
let's respect the Mac a little bit.
Genji didn't like it. We were trying to be polite, but yeah.
I kind of like Ritter too with his options. I get it. There's an interplay of options, receivers versus quarterback.
Do you remember when Baker Mayfield got Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry and Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, and he was going to be amazing, and then he was still Baker Mayfield? That's kind of where we're at.
There's a point in DeAndre Hopkins' career that Jacob Rickrod likes to point out a lot, which is the quarter-proof wide receiver is meant to be Hopkins, but even Hopkins had like a terrible year with the
Osweiler,
Brian Hoyer, and Osweiler, and like there's a point at which there's no like Calvin Johnson isn't fixing this quarterback room kind of a thing. DeAndre Hopkins isn't fixing this. And don't get me wrong, it is fine, because of his weapons.
But you don't want
quarterback, sure.
But you don't want fine though. Like you want to go get a quarterback, and
the fine Genji, quarterback is a guy that Zay Jones beats and starts. Like it's
and Genji and Joe are spot on. Genji says Ritter's a sell, and Joe said Ritter is probably a sell. Try to move up a tier by adding a first and getting a quarterback that you actually like are
before
excited
the
about.
Season.
Yeah.
Don't let them see it before you try to
That's it.
That's one of the ones where like you do it while there's still hope.
Yeah.
Dalton Thomas. AJ Dillon worth trading? Malik Willis worth dropping? Malik Willis in a super flex. My home Malik Willis on the back end. It's a quarterback. Super flex, he runs. It's cool. AJ Dillon, no, he's worth a roster spot in every fantasy format I can think of. He's a running back who's actually pretty decent on a depth chart with a lack of talent, in my opinion. That's gonna need its talented players to do stuff. So I think AJ Dillon's worth a roster spot in every.
But if you can get something for him, fine. If not, that he's a running back that, in case of emergency, break glass. If Aaron Jones got hurt and AJ Dillon got 290 carries, he's going to be decent.
It's what's the trade, but like I'm not trading him for a third. Like I'd rather just have AJ Dillon. So Taylor Heineke worth dropping. Depends on the roster and what's on the waiver wire, and if it's a super flex. But probably. Yep, both. Yeah. Dame overboard. That's funny. Looking to flip a running back for a young wide receiver. Was a move. Is Jacobs for the 103? I was going to say no when you said Jacobs, but for the 103 to get JSN, that's reasonable. That's.
I mean, I think you
or
still.
Addison.
I think it's like right there.
It's 1-to-1.
It's an overpay for points, but it's like value wise, it's pretty spot on. And in 2 years, it's JSN by a mile. So,
Genji, Heineke may be being out Ritter. I mean, I'm not gonna. Sure.
I mean, my
Superflex, I'll roster Mr. Toon, so I'm not against it, but I mean, not expecting it. And then the thing I know about Heineke is he's not going to be Gardner Minshew. Actually, wow, that was actually really impressive in that just got a start because he's going to be not flexible versus most wide receivers.
Right.
Kind of starter, which is not nothing, but just Just a heads up. I would also love to sell my Jacobs for JSN. In Dynasty, I would do that. But Zach's right. The team getting Jacobs is getting more points than they should.
Yeah.
But that's fine. It's Dynasty.
Yep.
Targets per route run don't predict future targets.
Alex Cora.
Dalton Thomas. Malik Warner's worth dropping in Dynasty. I would boss him above Tyler Heineke.
Yeah, it depends on how big your bench is.
Yeah, and who you would put in place of that spot.
But
it's a quarterback in a super flex. You have to earn that roster spot.
He has not done anything to this point to say that he's an NFL quarterback.
No, he's like Trey Lance without the positive. So I mean. If you're competing and want to win this year, don't sell.
Yeah, that's the point. Yeah,
I would agree with that too, Jonas. Yep. James Tucker, trade for Keontae Ingram, cheap. I actually added him in most of my rookie drafts. I'm holding a lot of Keontae Ingram, but I've thought about suggesting him a time or two, but I can't think of a great reason, especially based on what that team should look like this year, that he isn't just as good as most running backs in that range, but he is basically off the waiver wire at this point. It's fair. And what was that? What else was it? Or sell the house for Cup. Is it a choice between one or the other? I mean, get Cup if I have to choose. Yeah. We're notoriously bad at predicting which round one wide receiver will break. Stop. No, we're not. We're actually getting a lot better in Dynasty ranks at that. And like N'Keal Harry a lot, so I should shut the fuck up. But I'm not actually that bad. JSN and Addison are it, as far as I can tell. And again, this is the thing. Like, you have to have you can disagree with me, that's fine, but have a process that you are willing to throw your weight behind. Because you need one. Like, it's an area you can't not. Outside of borrowing someone else's, like I do quarterback, that's the other route. Borrow someone else's, but you have to have some way of saying this guy is good or bad. And from that perspective, JSN is good.
So, and again, this is not to, I guess it kind of is to toot my own horn, but like, not really. That's not my thing. But if you go from, what was it, 2017 was that Cup? My top wide receiver grades have been CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, Rondale Moore, Jamar Chase, Corey Davis, DJ Moore, JSN, Jordan Addison, Devontae Smith, Cooper Kupp, James Washington.
Sure, I'm going to look him up. The only one I missed is N'Keal Harry.
That's a so like
I have misses. Jalen Reagor, I had way too high, clearly, because I had him ranked somewhere. N'Keal Harry, I missed. But if we're talking about those disappointing that I think you're thinking about, Joannis, I would put my record up against anyone's spotting the Terrence Marshalls and the Quan Treadwells. Like, I think I've done a better job at that than I'm not gonna say it, but honestly, I don't know who's beaten me at that.
Right.
Again, Jalen Reagor, N'Keal Harry. I've been way too high on some, to be clear, but I've hit a lot more of the bus than most, I think. But there's not like a national database I can check, but I've been pretty good. I was never fooled by, even going back to but I don't think anyone fell for that. Who's that Colts first round draft pick? Small, speedy guy. Philip Dorsett. Didn't fall for Philip Dorsett. Even back from then till now, I've hit most of the bus. Didn't fall for John Ross, even though I tried to make as positive a data case as I could for him. I was like, I don't think he's it, but here's what he was good at. Because I want to respect the player. Didn't get fooled by John Ross. Didn't get fooled by any of them. I was way too high on Reagor and Jalen Reagor.
But that's
you've called me out for who's the fella? JJ Sager-Whiteside. But I was only average on him, and I pointed out before the season that he was most of his production came from touchdowns. I wasn't even. I didn't.
But you had him higher than Debo, man.
Yeah, Debo I missed on, but we're not he wasn't a first-round wide receiver. But
I mean, he was.
I
he
have
was
other
in
misses
my
I
first
should have
round,
hand ranked higher. Debo, I missed. Deontay Johnson, I had too low.
and
I
it's
still
not
don't
like,
know how
I
to
mean,
fix that. Debo is
like-
really unusual. Deontay Johnson's just an underproducer.
Yeah.
In the same way that Terry McLaurin, I missed on him too.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about the high drafted wide receivers with a full complement of stats, yeah, I think I did pretty well at it.
Yeah,
JSN and Addison don't look like that. They might be Rager and they might be Harry.
No. But again,
That's
to
it.
me, that's where the film comes in, because if I can crosshatch with what you are seeing with the numbers with my film, and oftentimes the players that you're seeing that are the numbers are higher are guys who are schemed in a certain way that I can see how they're schemed, that you don't see that with the numbers. So like Rager to me and Laviska Shenault, a whole bunch of people love Laviska Shenault. Watching how they got Laviska Shenault the ball, watching how Rager got the ball, it to me is similar to Kadarius Toney. It's guys who need to be schemed in a certain. Even N'Keal Harry was that way, but I got blinded by the Belichick, and he's going to see that in order for N'Keal Harry to succeed, you got to play him in the slot, you got to get him the ball and let him make yards after the catch, and then once you're inside the 20, you can throw jump balls to him, but he's not creating separation downfield. It didn't happen. They just were like, you don't create separation anywhere, and we have Edelman, so you're not playing in the slot, go away. But
Jake would say I got DK Metcalf wrong, but honestly, even at the time I was pointing out, I was hating on him mostly because Jake liked him so much. But if he didn't play enough, he was one of the. Same with Brandon Ayuk. I had one good year, one bad year. Like, we can go through the whole history, but I think I did relatively. It's one of the things I do relatively well. You just remind me of something. I can't think of it. Anyway, we're living past defeats. Joanna. Yeah, Jacobs, that's not the only thing that should be rock hard when considering Jacobs for fantasy. I would also point out, I think Jacobs is basically what everyone's always wanted Joe Mixon to be, but without the value. I think that's probably where I go for a hot dynamic. Like, Jacobs is it, and he's been in the top 12 more than you think. He's younger than you think he is. He's only disappointing because in his rookie year, he was barely used as a receiver, even though we were expecting that from his college profile. But that Raiders offense is also the Raiders offense that couldn't get anything out of Amari Cooper, so they traded him, and he had his top 12 breakout year in Dallas. Like, that Raiders offense, I'm not an NFL coach, but I think they did bad. I think they did a bad job. They couldn't get anything out. They couldn't do well with Jacobs and Carr, who's fine, and Amari Cooper. At a certain point, it's not the roster, you know. Thanks all for chatting with each other. It's nice to see. James Tucker, playing darts, blowfish in a hurricane, and why you love fantasy football. Yeah, it's a fairly good fantasy metaphor, similar. James Tucker, what is the chance Bryce Young flops? Quarterback evaluation, not me, but I'm borrowing from Travis. I'm borrowing from Zach. The same chance Lawrence had at flopping. Like, he's a pretty solid quarterback option, honestly, across the board. Like, based on a few things that I look at, it's good. And then when I go and borrow the people I trust process, are like, no, this guy's really good. So I would say slim, especially with his draft capital, that backs that up. I mean, it happened, but I would say it's slim. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. What happens if Stroud and Young bust? Mariota and Winston. The thing about quarterbacks in their rookie year as well is they don't have to do much, and we're still like, well, it's quarterback. I mean, Patrick Mahomes only played one game his rookie year, and all the excuses roll. The value doesn't change much even in disappointing years, and honestly, I can't even apply the strict wide receiver rule of disappointing sophomores. Like, it's not really a thing at quarterback. That's part of why it's such a I wait till I see it thing. Like, it's not a dead set they're terrible if they have a rough start. I mean, you can always run to the Josh Allen defense if you really need to, who, you know, prove in 1 year 2 by a larger margin in accuracy alone, just completion percentage, than literally anyone else has ever done. And Josh Allen's like QB1, and I think last year was a QB2. So the QB2 was a disappointing season for Josh Allen. disappointing rookie seasons. At quarterback, you can kind of still expect at least decent value, you know? Unless, actually, I used to have a rule, but it stopped happening in ADP. Like, if a young quarterback who hasn't done a top 12 season yet gets ranked in the top 5, I was selling immediately. Because we had a habit of we were expecting more Daks and more Mahomeses and more of these great quarterbacks like we're kind of doing right now. And so we had a pattern and a habit of putting like Sam Darnold up there to be edgy. And I think it happened with the Wentz guy too. And so like, yeah, outside of that. I think I skipped one here. Sorry. I know Zach's got to go to bed. I've got a lot. I record a podcast, guys. So don't be surprised if we rush it in the comments. Brian, if you guys have done an SFB mocks, I haven't been able to yet, but I did make my draft sheet if you're interested. Give a few players you think are being overdrafted given the format. I haven't linked into it that far.
Every tight end after.
Given the format. It's basically a super flex league on acid. So running backs and quarterbacks even more important than they usually are for a redraft format. Again, you got the same problems with running backs' predictiveness and their injury rate. But honestly, even a no-T fellow like myself is looking at the wide receivers, and I think we're probably overdrafting them at this point. Because running backs with a scoring and no negative scoring for quarterbacks means it's just kind of green lights across the board, even down into the top 24. It's as if John Hogue was right. That's where we're at with Scott Fishbowl scoring. Like quarterbacks. Like to the point that Travis Kelce provides the single greatest edge in that format repeatedly year over year for the last 3 years. I will not take Travis Kelce over a quarterback. Even though I have the second pick, I'm probably not taking Kelce, even though he provides the single greatest edge. Like, I do not want my quarterback room to be thin, not in this format. And second round, while stacking up with Diggs is a great idea. I've heard that a lot in the 2 chat, or stacking up whatever quarterback you happen to take there, depending on the first pick. Mahomes, Allen, Hurts is an option there. Honestly, I'm probably going to be looking at another quarterback, especially because of the third round reversal. Or a running back, because I think running backs are more competitive in the scoring format.
So I have the first overall pick in my division. And
who are you taking?
I'm going to take Josh Allen. But
solid.
Yeah, but like if I was going to take Kelce, I would not take a quarterback until the whatever it is, the 5-6 turn. And like the reason is because the guys basically after the third, like when I come back from the third round reversal, the guys who are there are basically the same player all the way to the 5-6 turn.
Yeah.
Like until I get into like Kenny Pickett and that, like I'm okay with punting. So if I took Kelce at 101, I would be hammering running backs. If I could get Jacobs and Henry, which you potentially could, and a wide receiver or even Kittle in the in that 4-5, like I'm doing that, or the 3-4, whatever it is. So what?
And that's to that point, I was exaggerating my typical stuff. Like the very top of the quarterback room, I do not want to be thin at. Dak Prescott, love him in Dynasty. I'm not all about it in the Scott Fishbowl. He's not providing the edge that I'm talking about. Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields.
Yeah.
Betting that Justin Fields is one of those guys in this ADP, which is around about where he's going, is ridiculous as far as I can tell. Like he's right there next to Herbert. I'm like, Herbert, I understand. Fields is a bit of a stretch over Christian McCaffrey in a redraft format in this scoring. But again, if he hits, it's going to be great. And you do have to take upside shots at quarterbacks. You need that production at the top of the quarterback room, and there's only so many of them. So
yeah,
trying to bet one of them is probably a smart move at some point. But that's like, oh God. The That's a little too high for me. I'd rather take the Watson pick, which is later. That's too high. But anyway, that's where my head's at. Those are a few players that are standing out early. Outside of that, Juju's ADP in general, especially since I'm leaning fade wide receiver early, still solid in this format. Rookies are always going to be a value in, even though it's going to be a disappointing rookie year, in redraft as well. Like JSN and Addison are going to provide hopefully a lot down the stretch because that's what rookies typically do. So, yeah. Do you have any follower leagues? Yeah, I actually now have a Patreon league on Sleeper. I hate Sleeper, and my patrons hate me, so they made me play on Sleeper. I guess. But yeah, I'm hoping to play with more people. I've actually added a few leagues, which I'm almost dead set against because I want to play with some new people. Some of them have been offered to me just from Twitter, and one of them, my patrons, were like, "Well, do it." And then it was like pulling teeth trying to get them to join the league, but they did, and now I have a Patreon league, but I don't have any to join right this second. I'm hoping to get back to those. That's what I liked about the underdog drafts. We could all draft together, and then we didn't have to pay attention to the league, so we didn't have 20 weekly waiver wire things we had to worry about. And Zach, is there anyone can play with you?
James, my home league rookie draft, if you're in Maine, is always in June, so you'd have to talk to Kyle. We have a spot potentially open for next year, but no, I don't have any follower leagues. I'm not like Peter is the one with the followers. I'm just the hanging out, having fun on Wednesday nights.
That's too much. James Tucker, make it look like you've done it before. Fake it till you make it.
Well, no, but it's both though, Peter. It's make it look like you've done it before. So like when you do something right, you don't have to tell everybody that you did it right because you were supposed to. You've done it before, you'll do it again. And if you mess something up, that's fine too. Like own it. I had Rondale Moore as a top tier wide receiver in that class, up in the same vein as Jamar Chase. I missed. So and that happened. So like make it look like you've done it before. Covers those two. Don't do stupid stuff and make it look like you've done it before. Cover a multitude of sins.
Nice. James Tucker, which Chiefs wide receiver is worth trading for? Travis Kelce, Justin Ross. Finish. End of list.
I still like Rashee Rice, Peter.
Okay. I'm fine with his rookie ADP, so I guess I count that way, but I'm not actively trading into him. Ross is free. I like that. But yeah. None, really. I guess Rashee Rice. Okay, I'm out.
Tied. We're back.
I shouldn't have given Genji the third vote. Sky was with a first last year. Yeah, how about that? Didn't miss on him either. Just putting that on that. We should be thrilled at Rashee Rice at 205 in a rookie draft. Awesome.
And I've got him at the back end of the first round. You don't have to take him there. That's the great thing about ranks is like I can give you what I think, and then you can use ADP to get value.
There you go.
Like Justin Jefferson.
Aaron Rodgers does consistently have the highest touchdown rate ever. And he does seem to affect the wide receivers. But notably, the first time Adams and Rodgers were separated, Adams kept his high touchdown rate.
Adams is pretty good, though. Like
again that interplay is what we don't know where it's at.
Peter, the thing that Davante Adams does better than any receiver in the NFL is run a 6-yard slant in the red zone. No, like it's unbelievable. He's so good at it. And the only player who even comes anywhere near that specific skill set is Debo. Like it's wild.
Well, I wasn't disagreeing that Adams was good at it. I was pointing out that he was good at it without Adams, without Rodgers.
Yeah, but you also had Derek Carr who like fixates on one receiver and just he's like, I'm going to throw to this guy. Like, it before he even gets to the line of scrimmage. And it happens to be Davante Adams who has the best single slant route. So he can do it. He's just like, okay.
Doesn't disagree with that either. I was just pointing out it's in his bag of tricks.
Yeah. No, it's not. I'm not saying it's just Rodgers.
I know.
But
I'm not either.
it's when we go about this, like you're saying, it's not Rodgers. And it's
no, I'm not saying
kind of Rodgers.
I said the first thing I said was Rodgers definitely does that, but I'll point out that some wide receivers aren't just a product, even if they're really good. That's what I'm pointing out. The interplay is a little more complex, and quarterback good, wide receiver benefit, wide receiver good, quarterback.
Stafford's better than Goff.
Yeah, it's true.
Does
Kyler get traded to the Patriots, who have Hopkins by week 5? Yes, why not? Why not? Because why not? That would be fun. Yeah, sure.
I don't think the Patriots have the cap space for Kyler, but
yeah, come on.
Kyler's got his.
Genji's betting on Atlanta. I think that would be better for that team for sure.
Yeah.
And Joanna, in my opinion, Kyler not getting traded. I think that would be silly to trade him. But again, I'll say anything's going to happen because I have no way of knowing. His contract was massive, and he's still very good and young. This COD debate speaks more about his love of video games than his love of football. That was literally just a meme on the internet, I think, and we've adopted it as like he loves video games. But maybe I don't know these people. Redraft is boring. Just draft best available and hope no one gets hurt. I mean, play what you love, I guess, but I'm sure lots of redraft players say there's more to it. But I like Dynasty. It's more so the Cardinals just being so bad they'll be in the Caleb sweepstakes.
I mean, maybe, but it's also offensive line or that to me.
If you have a good quarterback, why not improve other positions to improve at quarterback? I mean, maybe
the problem with the Cardinals is that they actually did sign Kyler to a big long-term deal. So like everyone who was praising them for being smart for trading Rosen to get Kyler, they just blew it by signing a quarterback to a huge percentage of their cap.
Mm-hmm.
Because part of the advantage of having a quarterback on a rookie contract is your quarterback is not a huge percentage of the cap, and you can add things to him. No, you're fine.
I did forget to address the ACL component of someone's question, but that's because I just can't speak to injuries. But yeah, 3 ACL injuries over only 1 year, I guess. But Spears, I think, could be great. ACL seem to have fallen into a territory where they're fixable by modern science, but not all ACLs are equal. And again, I have to get to a point where I'm like, I can't speak to injuries, but the team seems confident that he can play at the NFL level, which speaks well.
But it's to me, the ACL injury doesn't even factor in. It's the fact that he's a little bit undersized. He's not a great runner inside, and so you're going to need to get him in space, and which means to me that he's not a 3-down back, which means he's a little less valuable than say some of the other guys. But it's not he's not bad, but he just is not quite what you're hoping.
This is one of the areas where I don't like. Jacob Rickroad was on a Larry Fitzgerald says quarterback matters kick for a while, and it's hard for me to really, because I don't want to, and also there's no way of me doing it, challenging that players find good quarterbacks better, mainly because obviously if you're a wide receiver doing most of the work by yourself, like having a quarterback who does some of that for you instead of you having to bust your ass to be like the 1 percentile in history who's able to catch that ball, Diggs helping Allen or Larry Fitzgerald helping everyone that played with him. And obviously it's better, but I think they're talking football. And I don't think we know the effect of that on fantasy when it's mostly about volume and variance. But yeah, Kyler's leadership, like I just kind of I don't know these people. I think we're way too swept up in a tweet that was really hilarious about his video game usage. That's all I know about it. I don't even know how important leadership is. These are all grown-ass adults trying to try a sport at a professional level. Most NFL athletes I've heard speak on it, while it matters and the locker room matters, from their perspective, it's I'm paid to do a job. I'm gonna do a job. Like I like a better leader. I want a better quarterback, but I'm here to play and have the team recognize that I'm doing my job seriously. Not, this guy doesn't encourage me enough, so I'm going to pound. Like, they're not trying to do that, you know?
There are very few points in a season, and there are some, where that actually matters. Most of what matters is what goes on between the lines on the field, whether or not he can produce. There are going to be a few situations during a season where they need something. When I played baseball, we had a really big, for us, it was a really big playoff game. The guy who was our leader showed up to batting practice dressed full on Captain America, took batting and just loosened like stuff like
it
that.
Helps.
Like
it's stories like Tom Brady in the
yeah,
huddle, and that
yeah.
all matters. But again, I don't know where the line
but
is.
It's not.
I just think I'm gonna trust these players to be able to take care of, to do the job when they don't have that. Like there's there are fewer great NFL quarterback leaders than there are quarterback spots, and a lot of great players are doing a lot of great work without it. They can't, like, I think it's too, like, unless it's all there, it can't. It just seems like exaggerating 1%. I mean, it's great when you have it, but I don't think it's necessary. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. Same thing with Lance. He's a quiet dude. See,
but he hasn't done it yet. That's the difference.
So this is all part of the narratives I worry just slander player. It's like if Lamar Jackson wasn't Lamar Jackson, they literally asked him to convert to wide receiver in interviews. Don't underrepresent that we're player fans and the NFL's just a business. They will tank players' careers because it doesn't matter overall. Mariota got slack for not being a leader. Now, he didn't work out long term, but the NFL will just take on a narrative of a player who could be really good. And I think we should be more hesitant to engage with these narratives about things that just through conversation, you can admit that it's not necessary for a team to be good or for a player to be good. Then we're feeding into the potentially a player having a worse career than they could have because we don't like a story when it's not necessarily like, I'm a player fan. I'm not going to feed into these narratives, which can only possibly help teams dismiss players who could well be good. This is undrafted free agents not getting respect even when they outperform drafted players because the NFL likes its own farts. That happens. Players don't make their bank, don't provide for their family their entire lives. Not because the NFL, they weren't good enough in the NFL, because the NFL may as well just ignore the fact that they got it wrong. Because why not? They're just a business. It's just a content sport. And so, like, any angle I can take on ignoring shit like quiet leadership, I'm gonna do, because if one Arian Foster happens and gets not the contract to make all contracts because he's lower drafted or because he has less leadership, then it's not worth it. It's not worth me engaging with the idea. Save the receipts. That too. All my clips suck. Kyler, DK and a 25 first or Fields, DJ Moore and Rashad White.
The first
Super
one.
Flex. Yeah.
I mean, either way, it doesn't matter. Like Kyler and Fields are a push because, like, I think Kyler is better, like safer. I think Fields has the ceiling. DK over DJ Moore, like without even hesitating, and a 25 first over Rashad White. So yeah.
I think this is about Kincaid. Pitts had a much. Like, he had a good wide receiver production profile. Kincaid has a good tight end one.
Pitts is an
Pitts is in
an animal. Yeah, that's not.
It's Evan Ingram. Like, it's almost a different thing. Trey McBride is the other guy, though, and they've all struggled to a certain extent to take tight end so far. But yeah, different kind of question, different kind of prospects. But you're right about where his range has ended up, to be fair. Joanna, guys, give me your guys to gain above average value in 2023. No rookies. I haven't got to that list yet. I have done my breakouts a little bit, but I haven't summarized the list. Rondell Moore, and Rashad Bateman are the two wide receivers I like real deep. I like Amon-Ra. That's too high to be my guy, right? Well, it depends how you define my guy. I'm going to talk forever and not come up with a great list. I think I'm going to stick with the ones I always say. Juju, Marcus Brown, perennially undervalued. Jordan Addison, if I'm going to take a rookie, because I'm Ghana. Josh Downs as well, because screw the tape. Aaron Jones, we've already mentioned. I like Rashad White, just to have one that's going to be different from anything that you say. I think Damian Pierce at running back is slightly undervalued as well. These aren't my guys, though. These are just values.
Well, and that's the thing. And we're getting so much better at doing it. Ayuk would be the one that stands out to me. That you don't think so?
No, I agree with this season. Put it that way.
I mean, like, he's wide receiver 29 right now on DLF's ADP. Like to me, he could. But again, there's
he's someone that made my breakout list that I haven't made yet, because 4th year breakouts are rare, but we haven't seen one in quite a while, and that would be him if it's going to be one. So yeah,
but
my guys, it's all Juju, Marcus Brown. It's everyone's disrespecting Austin Eckler, I guess, right now.
to me, Joe, when I look at guys who are going to, I'm not looking for above average value, which I know that sounds counterintuitive. I'm looking for guys who are, their production is going to be undervalued. So I'm looking at, again, Kittle. I'm looking at Jerry Jeudy. I'm looking at DeAndre Swift. I'm looking at Amari Cooper. All of these, Terry McLaurin, I think these are players that are being undervalued because they are a little bit older and they're not sexy, and they're players that I fully expect to flirt with the top 12 at their positions.
My guy is a slightly different conversation from value. You can find these things anyway, but I'm just going to go to the thing I'm using to write up that article every week. The guy I am higher on than my fellow DLF rankers. So not ADP. I don't care what the masses are doing. The sharp folks who disagree with me and probably deserve to. The guys I value more than even them. The very top of the list is Justin Herbert, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Kyler Murray, Mark Andrews, Trey McBride, Najee Harris, Saquon Barkley, Juju Smith-Schuster. Now, normally I wouldn't include a lot of those because some of those are so high drafted that it's very what situation your team's in. But that's the top. That's the top of the list. And if we're talking deep, which is usually in my guy conversations, let me filter greater than 100, the first 100 picks. Trey McBride, Juju Smith-Schuster, Roschon Johnson, Tank Bigsby, Mike Thomas, and Justin Ross. Take a pick. Which kind of list you want? Great info on Kincaid. Yeah, Zach's write-ups should be bought and paid for somewhere, but they're not. So unless you listen to the Hootenanny, check out that podcast, those podcast episodes. You don't even have to go subscribe, but just go look up those 4 episodes.
There were like 6 this year. Oh, there were a bunch. They were maybe 7. Again, I don't know.
You're getting 3 independent evaluations that are really doing well on the top prospects. So you're not hearing about players that you don't need to know about. They're really good. They're a really good breakdown. And all 3 of those evaluations, even though tape is a fiction and you shouldn't listen to it.
Peter, really, that's where your numbers come from. Your numbers come from my tape.
Don't have to adopt their opinions.
Absolutely,
but there are people whose opinions I weigh.
Well, and I think to me, like we say this before every show that we do our rookie evaluations, is we may not be right, but we're going to tell you what we see and what we think and why we think that, and then you know this, Peter, but like your evaluation and your run through the numbers is invaluable to my overall evaluation because I can't watch all of the players. I can only watch between 40 and 60 players a year to give them the kind of attention that they deserve. But you can cast that great big wide net and say, oh, well, you know, these players are minimal chance of succeeding. These players you didn't watch, I have some interest in, and so I can go back and where we disagree or where you have players that I need to go watch, I can then do my line fishing after you've cast out the big trawl net with your numbers. And so like it's I'm standing on the shoulders of giants in terms of the metrics to assist with my evaluation of the tape. So it's not like a freestanding tape evaluation. I do my tape evaluation. I listen to what you and David Wilsey and a bunch of the metrics guys that I value and think highly of, and then use that to kind of fill in the blanks. Where it's a little bit like Jurassic Park, man. You're the frog DNA that we're filling things in, and then all of a sudden we get little dinosaurs running around.
All right, for those stayed late or a stream we've really got to end soon, here's a pro tip. And it doesn't work 100%, and like everything else, you take it with a grain of salt. But don't look at follow accounts. Go look at who's following them, because you can click on the list and you can see who's following this person. Speaking of standing on the shoulders of giants, guess who doesn't get followed by Adam Harstead? If you go and click on Zach's who's following this guy icon, wherever it is, or J. Mike Check, who's also on that podcast, what you will see is people that you follow, because they're really, really good. You'll see Scott Barrett. You'll see Matt Waldman. You'll see the football guys following all of them. That's
JJ.
Don't look at follow accounts. You're going to see JJ Zacharyson following all of them.
I was in
Popeyes. I follow Adam Harstead. He doesn't follow me. Nothing I say is going to teach Adam Harstead something he doesn't know. Just pro tip. Every now and again, you want to fact check. Is this guy's opinion any good? Because I've never heard or made up my own mind. Go see if someone you already respect follows. And everyone on that podcast you'll find is followed by people whose opinions you already respect. That's one way of looking at it. Don't have to adopt them, but it is perspective worth hearing, apparently. 24-year-old rookie. I mean, yeah, let's see how he produces. Third year, fourth year declares is overrated, especially now. But yeah, Alan Davis, sorry I'm late to the party again. I'm just happy you ever turn up, Alan. Sincerely. Thanks very much. Joe, what happened to everyone in the chat? There's really not a lot of us. It's mostly just you, Joe. Can't see anyone anymore. I don't know why. I didn't change anything, I swear. I can see you. We see you, Joe. JB, 12-team PPR, start 10. 1 QB just traded Breece Hall and Terry McLaurin for Hill and Madison. Plus 24 first. Call it late, but maybe mid. I assume they're all mid. Let's see. Madison's a good value get right now. Breece Hall, McLaurin, and Tyreek Hill for Madison on the first. If that's Tyreek Hill, I think I just want the Breece Hall side here. McLaurin's fine. Really fine. And Breece Hall is one of those young running backs. Madison's just a really underrated one-year starter. The first is nice, but it's just Breece Hall, I think. Here. Zach? Breece Hall side?
Yeah, I think so. That one's close, but I think it's Hall.
Non-PPR, would you trade Pickens plus 224 first? Probably for Lamb. I'd probably rather have Lamb, but that's a lot of first to be giving it for wide receiver in a non-PPR league, to be honest. The values should be a little lower than that. But, it's a fine trade, and I don't play a lot of non-PPR, so it's hard for me to experience that one. Like, is that regular? I don't know. Feels like half a first too much in a non-PPR. But you want Lamb of this trade. Lamb's probably a good get there, but just a word of caution. I don't have a lot of experience in the non-PPR world anymore. Adam Harstead says it's more important to study those who fail rather than succeed in any endeavor we're pursuing. What common traits do bad managers all share? Good question. And what does this lower? Does this lower your upside? Chasing sleepers. The reason I have the heuristics I have is trying to ban myself from doing some of these bad moves. Chasing sleepers. Falling into the mistake of because it's cheap, it's a good idea. In Dynasty, bleeding small amounts of value over a consistent period of time just kills your roster with very little chance of significant upside. You're trying to blow it all by getting one low odds bet, which if you get it right once, sounds great. But if you're trying constantly to do it, you're just playing badly. That's what I would say. Sleepers are my big thing. Like, I just don't do it.
To me, the thing that most of the people that I see fail is a strong word, but that struggle with Dynasty is they get set in one mindset. They like, this is how to win. And
I will
and
be
so,
0 RB.
and so it, like, you may be successful for the first couple of years doing whatever it is that you're doing, but eventually things shift. And if you are playing a new game by the same old rules, you're inherently going to fail. And so, to me, it's people don't adapt. They get set in the way they play, and it gets comfortable. Like I have to come out of my, like, right now, because 0 RB is back. It's in vogue. And that's how I am most comfortable playing this game. I have to adjust and take the value where it is, because running backs are being undervalued. There is value at tight end that is being missed because people are psychologically, they've been hurt by Andrews and they've been hurt by Kittle because they didn't play well last year. Kittle at the beginning of the year, Andrews at the end of the year, both due to injury. But to me, it's getting stuck in that mindset and not seeing the big picture. That's why a lot of people struggle with fantasy.
This seems to be what Joe's saying by playing safe. A lot of what you're describing.
Yeah. And
I was going to say the other thing I would say is just a common, like, things that you should try to avoid in order to try not be bad at anything is not being willing or being able to assess. Like, you should know when you got something wrong and you could have not gotten that wrong reasonably, if that makes sense. Because that's the only way you get better. Like, we don't know the future. I can't say I would get Terry McLaurin right this year in his rookie draft or Deontay Johnson, because I've looked again and again. I can't find a way that I, with my process, would have hit on them more often. But I can know that I could have done better on N'Keal Harry based on some of the stats I've since learned to do better with. And it's the same with Kevin Benjamin. I actually got that wrong by getting it right. Like, after his rookie season, I was like, I was wrong. And then his second season happened, and I was like, I've been wrong twice now. Because I hadn't quite learned career arcs as well as I thought I had at that point. And so I improve and I change it. And if you can't do that bit, then you're always going to be compounding problems. You have to be able to change based on things that I got. Recognize that you got some things wrong, and the ones that you can get right if you change your behavior. Like, that part of the assessment is kind of underrated. You should know when you're wrong, and you should also put a lot of time into figuring out when you could have done it better, or you need to rely on someone else, like I do with quarterback valuation. I'm going to say L because you sold Brees the Beast. Fair enough. I do disagree with you, Peter. I appreciate that. I still can't see anyone. I'm sorry. And maybe the chat is on the DLF feed. It might be if you're watching on the DLF feed or my feed or DLF. Or I think I'm also streaming on. No, it's just a DLF feed on mine on 3 or 4 different platforms, so that could create a different chat. This is Peter's channel. It's going out on all of them, but you guys seem to be on the one instead of the other. Thanks, Mrs. Scampers. I tried to share my link instead of the DLF link because they got enough fucking followers, man. But it does go out to all 3. I can see you, but I can't see previous comments on both channels. So I don't. YouTube, don't run it. Josh Allen MVP year. He's already had that, right? I think he's going to be very good again this year, and still getting drafted behind Patrick Mahomes. So.
The thing to me about this year versus last year is Allen was fantastic. Was the QB1 last year? He was hurt for like 4 or 5 games. Like he hurt his hand, so he wasn't no,
kind of important for a quarterback.
Yeah. So,
not being a tape guy, but
like not to, but like I am in the 101 chat. I don't want to tell tales out of school, but most of the people in the 101 chat are off Josh Allen because of the bye week like the first week of the playoffs, but you get the average of whatever he put up, so whatever. And you only have to be in the top 90%. Like as long as you're out of the bottom 10%, you're good. And they're also worried that like he didn't do quite as well as they thought he should last year. And I'm like, he was hurt.
Now, as a guy who got Josh Allen abominably wrong after that first season, like I have a lot of Josh Allen Dynasty, Scott Fishbowl. I'm planning to draft Josh Allen probably because I assume anyone drafting a quarterback is going to take Mahomes or they'll take Kelsey. That's about where I think the draft is going to go through the first two. But yeah, I just keep drafting the guy who scores more points. I mean, Hurts is a very fair pick there too. I know a few people want to do that. Hey, Mr. Scampers. Joanna. Oh, okay. Good to know it's not just me. Sorry, Mr. Scampers and Joe. Rain Man, thanks for grinding. You guys are almost always still going when I'm home from work, and the advice is clearly based on extensive work and knowledge. I mean, it's based on a lot of failure, but I really appreciate you checking us out. After work, coming and listening to us talks when you're tired and overworked. I appreciate you, man. Thanks very much. And Genji, Pickens, lock, wide receiver 1. The upside, sure. I actually have always thought Pickens has a lot of upside. I mean, so does Mike Williams. But he's been hurt a lot, to be fair. Yeah. You need at least Andy Dalton. That's all I'm saying. I don't think he got it. And Deontay Johnson's gonna hoard. Only because of Pickett. I actually think that's fair. Yeah. Nah. Okay. You might be right that I'm thinking of trading. Okay. I don't want to read your conversation out loud. I apologize. I didn't realize I was doing that till I was halfway through. Andrew, I agree. Pickett limits Pickens his upside a bit, but I think he's going to be amazing for a few years. I think that's an important point to add to your evaluation here, Pros. Like, he doesn't have to be great next year to be good again at some point. Value-wise, points per game-wise, situations change. And while his targets per out run were abominable, I think his situation kind of justifies it a little bit. That's why I'm holding right now. Like, I don't want to give a first-round pick for him. I definitely don't want to trade him away for a first-round pick. So outside of those ranges, if I've got Pickett, I'm probably holding. There's a lot of upside in that, and situations change. Joanna, Peter, if it feels like you want to start giving player takes over process plays. I mean, the closer I get to the season, the more inclined I do get to that, because that's the way I think you have to play Dynasty. At a certain point, you have to take risks. But I try and spend a few months like giving my background so you can make different decisions and then ultimately come out to these are the decisions I'm making. So I'm going to pretend like they're right. Like I know they're going to be right because that's kind of the confidence you have to move. I've heard you say things about your past player evaluations, but aren't the two closely tied? Yep. But I try to do better with it over time.
And that's the thing is, yes, they are, because Joe asked me the same thing, but yes, they are closely tied, but you also are revising your process based on your evaluation of your misses and whether your misses were systemic or one of. And so I think going back and looking at what, like, again, a lot of the time, and Peter and I talk fairly often about this, is you can almost bucket types of players, at least for me watching the film. And by doing that, I can kind of see what I want to avoid. My go-to is always John Kelly. So John Kelly, like I loved what he did on film, but a lot of his success came from initiating contact and bullying defenders and running through defenders. And at the next level, that doesn't work because every single defender that you are facing is an NFL caliber defender when you're playing in the NFL. And so running over guys playing at Tennessee is a little bit different than running over guys when you're playing in the NFL. And so that changed my evaluation. It changed the way I looked at things. It got me off AJ Dillon when everybody was like, "Oh, AJ Dillon's the guy in this class, the sleeper," and he isn't. Like, he's fine, but he's not what you're looking for, because he's initiating a ton of contact, and I'm able to kind of avoid that archetype. The same thing with players.
I just knew Aaron Jones was better. I thought Dillon was fine, but Aaron Jones was different.
and also the gadget type players, the guys who are being schemed a ton for it. The NFL doesn't do that. The NFL wants you to be a NFL player and fit in an NFL offense, and they don't want to have to remake their offense so you can succeed. That's not a thing. And so
I would say about this process, one of the things that I've consistently found, especially over the last 3 years or so, is trying to find areas where I just have to accept I don't know, and instead playing the game instead of playing scared is the one way I've said it. Like, I don't know how to adjust for conference, and I've looked at it as many ways as I can imagine and have been suggested to me to look. So every time I see a player being adjusted for conference, I just play the ADP, and I don't think everyone's doing that right. This is a Paris Campbell thing, like, not to come at you for Paris Campbell term.
That's a guy who gets schemed for.
A lot of people told me he's better than you think, even though we had a similar process, because conference and adjustment. And I was like, I don't think I can evaluate you. I'm willing to bet that you're convincing yourself you can adjust for conference, and I'm right that you are not doing that right, because I don't think a clean adjustment, like they use a holistic adjustment for conferences, and I just don't think it exists. So I play that because, and again, it's not even playing the player. It's just from my research on stats, I think that process is flawed. That's a Terrace Marshall thing. Like, I went and looked at per game adjustments and tried to honestly consider, is the relatively small sample of games that Terrace Marshall's good production came from relevant? Because it might not be. I'm okay being wrong. But I want to honestly consider if that's happened a lot. And the answer is 0 times. Like, it could, doesn't mean it doesn't happen, which is why I played the ADP and played KG. Like, a lot of people that are really good at valuation, let alone Dynasty, were on Terrace Marshall. And I was like, I should definitely be wrong here. But as honestly as I can assess what I know of stats, and here's all the history, that's never happened. And here's a few times people have said it was going to happen and it didn't. And I just played that. Instead of, I know Terrace Marshall is bad, I just played, I'm pretty sure we're over betting on something that doesn't happen, or happens at a lot lower rate than the value suggests. If that means accepting the areas I don't think we can have answers has actually been the only way I've moved forward, actually. I haven't learned to read receiving yards per team pass attempt that much better. Although slot and age adjustment did help this year, I think that's the first time that's gone further down the line beyond age adjusted production instead of breakout age where I started. But finding areas where we overplay our hand has actually been where I think we overplay our hand has actually been one of the areas that have gotten better. So looking for a way to be right by knowing when you're wrong it's not always just been player evaluation improvements, is what I'm saying. It's finding out where I can't actually evaluate effectively. And so other people probably aren't either, as unfair as that sounds. Anyway, sorry, that's some of my thoughts on it. Richard Davis, trade DK and a projected late first for Garrett Wilson. Thoughts? DK's a spy, man, but getting Garrett Wilson seems like a win. And I think Zach, the Garrett Wilson 101 truther, would agree once he gets to read it.
I mean, that's it. Value-wise, it's probably Wilson. That's pretty close. Like, I don't see DK as much of a step down from Garrett Wilson, except in value.
That's the thing. It's like getting, I don't know, who do we want to compare? Who's a good top 12 wide receiver that we like?
DK Metcalf.
Okay, another guy. Okay, it's like getting Justin Jefferson in year 2 or Justin Jefferson in year 4. One's got more value, but I mean, they're both still pretty good. So if you're the first matters to your team, that's probably what swings the decision. How would you recommend doing power rankings for off-season versus in-season? I don't know. Power rankings, like for teams? I don't know. I don't think I have any thoughts on that. Power rankings in-season versus off-season.
That's not I don't dirty little secret. I don't work for any sites, so nobody can force me to do rankings.
I do player rankings, but not
I don't even do that because things vacillate, things move so fast, and value changes so fast that having a set rankings to me is actually a disadvantage.
I think the static rank, like it's necessary in the same way you have to make decisions. I see how they're useful and necessary, but you're right. Like, the truth is, it is fluid. So a list is never going to be great.
I'd rather have ADP and then figure out like what I think versus ADP than I would have rankings. But
traded Rosen for Kyler. Awesome. Oh, no, so you're talking about the team. Then they're lucky enough to trade Kyler for Caleb and upgrade again. That's fair, actually. That should be a good value process. But they shouldn't have given him that contract. 1 or 2, how would you recommend doing again? Sorry, man. I don't have many power rankings insights. 2, first Dynasty value, but 10th contender value. Yeah, this is about power rankings for teams. Honestly, I find all play win percentage or just all wins, like a full count of wins in all play, to be a fair ranking for teams effectiveness in a season and fairly predictive.
I was waiting for you to give it the Rate My League.
That's fair. Use the Rate My League tool. That's what we've been doing for this podcast, and it's fairly effective. It uses a mix of Dynasty starter and redraft value to rank teams. So in I don't know, some sort of formula somewhere. I don't have one myself. Otherwise, I give it to you. I swear. I look at all win percentage. Although I think all win totals, or just number of games won in an all win sense, has proven to be as effective. But I like the percentage just because, I don't know, it makes sense to me. Brandon, Deontay Johnson's an easy one, actually.
Yeah. He will score at least a touchdown this year.
We mentioned him a lot. Marcus Brown. I think Jacoby Myers has continued to be underrated. I wonder how much of that was New England, just because New England's remarkably successful at scheming. But Jacoby Myers has been great while he's been in the league. He's just respected again because of undrafted free agent status, as far as I can tell. My problem is, while I don't adjust for that, because I think players earn targets, but like New England's as uniquely managed team in a number of ways is Bill Belichick. And the only players we've seen leave have been like Edelman. Well, Edelman's still there. What am I talking about? It's Wes Welker at the back end of well into most of his, and he was still fairly effective for a while. But I don't know. New England's just a unique team. I'm just going to take that cop-out answer. I don't know. But Jacoby Myers has been fantastic relative to any other situation while he's been in the league. He's like wide receivers. Yeah, he's free relative to his value. 33% of games in the top 32, I think I remember seeing for last year, which is like everyone else in that range from last year is valued in the top 12, put it that way. Joe, Peter, you mentioned Jalen Tolbert and David Bell. Yeah, both misses of mine. Last 2 drafts. It's actually something I really talk about. Like lower drafted, these were second or third round picks, if I remember, but players not drafted in the first round, because drafts have gone so well over the last 3 years. We've gotten a distinct lack of production from most of the players that I like drafted, like Tolbert, like Bell. Even Justin Ross going into this year, like the undrafted free agent group as well, because the players have been popping off with relatively few misses. But anyway, as being on track for a possible no, I haven't talked about that. If they do what this season, if they get on track for a third-year breakout, they are very highly unusual. At this point, they just look like rookie misses. Again, 27% of breakouts, and they're cheaper than Sky Moore right now.
And
But I wouldn't invest capital in it.
Bell is one of those, again, the archetype of players that I am looking back into, because he's the guy that you say he was just in the right place all the time. He wasn't physically skilled. He wasn't better than anybody he was going up against. He just knew where to be, and eventually just knowing where to be doesn't get it done.
Pay off.
Yeah. So.
No, and we can't, Joe. These are, in my opinion, these are just dead roster spots that I'm holding. I got these two wrong to the things that I get wrong.
Brian Edwards was a similar.
I've gotten better at not getting it wrong a second time, in that recognizing that this is now looking bad. For sure, 27% breakouts. And those that do well, it's Devontae Adams, Chris Godwin, both higher drafted, much more high, much better profiles than both. Like, I was hoping for Michael Gallup here, and I got Tolbert and Bell. They're just misses. I got Brian Edwards. They're just misses. I mean, you can always hope, like the Sky Moore truthers are hoping, but you're hoping on David Bell and Tolbert at a lower value, I guess. But just because it's cheap doesn't mean it's good. I'm trying to stick to the principles here. You're good. Yeah, very unlikely at this point, but they're on a lot of my rosters. I try not to drop those second-year disappointments unless I find good running backs to replace them with, for the exact same principles I've been talking about. Kid's fifth year declare.
Yeah, because he went to like San Diego maybe before he transferred to. It was an FCS.
I can't remember. Sounds right.
I can look it up.
10-team Superflex PPR start 10.
San Diego.
Mahomes, stack, Lance. Thank you. Kyler, Richardson, Bajon, Jacobs. Is this starting lineup? Kittle, McBride. Good for the next 3 years. Any moves to make? I really like the starting lineup. You've got a great one. Kyler's going to be a good 2 whenever he's healthy, and you've got a lot of upside in Richardson and Lance. Bajon and Jacobs and ETN is a great top 3. And your wide receivers are not, and you're not missing at any position. So I think it's really solid. Outside of, can I improve my depth even more, which would be hard to hope for. But I mean, let's see if I could trade Devontae Adams to Amon-Ra St. Brown because he's younger. But you're not doing that because Adams is lower valued. So I don't think so. I can't see any moves, but
this would be the type of team where you could go either way on Richardson. Like you have the luxury of being able to hold him to see if he is going to be, but you also have the luxury of you don't need him. And if somebody in your league is willing to overpay for, especially if you see the camp hype on Richardson, if somebody's willing to overpay, and you make your team that much better with your QB 4, like that's.
Yeah, you have all the moves available because you have such thick value at quarterback and wide. Like you can move in any direction, but every position's solid. The top of each depth chart is you have the one at all 4 positions, in my opinion. Kittle is easily. I mean, it's Kelsey, but Kittle is all. One that isn't Kelsey for me. So yeah, there are always moves to make, but I think you're waiting to end season and see what happens. Like someone's going to get hurt, someone's going to underperform our expectations, but then you have the value to try and make up for it. You're competing. You should try and win this year. That's where my mind's at on it. I don't want to bleed all my value right now because there's no reason to do. Because the only thing that's going to change that from your roster is unexpected things in season. So I'd try to adjust to those. Josh Allen hasn't won an MVP. I would believe you. I don't keep track of that stuff. Gary Russell, Zach is onto something. He's onto a lot of things. People are always behind the 8 ball as the game of football adapts. You're trying to be quicker rather than slower as a consistent edge in most games, but especially Dynasty right now. As the game changes, it changes fantasy football, and it's just human nature for us not
Yeah, we don't want to change. We're creatures.
It's human nature not to want to change. Yeah.
Yep.
You're right. I appreciate you, Gary. Thanks very much. Just because I don't comment each week doesn't mean I'm not listening. I really appreciate you occasionally throwing out a comment, though. I was going to say this on my podcast this week. Like, every now and again, I get a message from someone I have never seen before. Like, hey, by the way, I checked this stuff out and I like it.
But
and
Gary,
it's about the only thing that keeps me going. So.
Gary, you've seen before, like actually seen before, like hung out at the expo.
But no, I just meant this kind of comment. Like, I don't comment, but every now and again throwing on out there, it's like a lifeline for me at this point, to be honest. So I really appreciate it, Gary. Thank you. I'd rather trade my Wilson for DK in the first. I can see it balanced, but yeah.
I mean, it is, again, like I think the value's on the Wilson side.
But you get a first with DK.
I don't hate it either way. And I understand the what Richard is saying, where like in 2 years you'd rather have Wilson, but we're still like you're in the moment here. So yeah.
But that first could be a boat. And between two good wide receivers, you get a maybe. And yeah, you're right. Again, I said Wilson, so I don't know why I'm making your camera.
I mean, I think
it's balanced. I think it's
yep.
You're good both ways. Can end up scared of the vet wall fall off. No. Okay. 12-team PPR Superflex. Tyreek for Olave. Yeah, take Olave. It's Dynasty. Tyreek's going to outproduce in the next 2 years. Just buckle up.
I'd want to try to get something. I'd do like Olave in a second.
Same.
Or Olave in a first
trade.
Yeah.
It's like the answer's Wilson. The answer's Olave. But it's the same position trade for good players. So it's kind of don't do those trades, maybe.
Those are hard.
But if you're making me choose, Olave Wilson. Like again, I think the best mind map or whatever explanation of what I'm trying to say is Olave is on the Amari Cooper train. Now, Amari Cooper is something to you right now. But try to work back through your feelings on Amari Cooper. You were slightly disappointed. He was perpetually top 24. Got traded, broke it in the top 12. Like that was the arc. Players who do really well in their rookie year, like Olave, with all the volume, tend to just have slightly elevated top 12 breakout years. And it's usually because of a situation change. Usually it's a small group. But that's what I would have in my head with Olave. I'm good. I am fine. But I'm giving up my upside more immediately with Tyreek Hill, for example. Olave Wilson is slightly different. They both have that upside this year. DK and Wilson. The way I look at I think, we're not adding anything here, Richard. We already think what you think. So I think we're just explaining it in our own ways. Power rank question is more a commish question. Another reason we need Russ here. He's a commish among us. Just started doing them to add discussion to the league. Yeah, that's a curious way of going it. I would say check out the Rate My League things, but they're a pay thing, and I don't want to feel like I'm plugging. But I would say there are tools out there that try to help commissioners out by encouraging engagement, by trying to create content or power rankings or a tool to break down teams or keep the off-season interest going. Rate My League is an interesting one. Can I think of any others that I know of? No, I can think of some commish resources like Commission Possible as a podcast. That's a fun listen to. Tell you what, come back to the stream sometime. I'll ask Russ if there's anything he can think of for that kind of question for a commissioner. And if he gets 5 minutes, I'm sure he'll send me an answer. But it is actually questionable whether I'll find 5 minutes in the next week. But I'll try my best for you. How close in fantasy football tied to chat? How much of fantasy football is chance? If closely, shouldn't we play for upside? You should do that, even if it's not. But okay. And doesn't this go against Harstead's study the failures of others? Many people. Zach, you go first. You follow them.
So yes, a lot of it's tied to chance. Yes, you should play for upside. A lot of people misevaluate what upside is and how much upside there is in certain situations. And so that to me is a big way to evaluate the failures. So just take, for example, Gabe Davis at the beginning of last year when PFF was on the Gabe Davis hype train, and Peter and Jacob Rickroad and I did a 4-part Dynasty Crossroads basically on Gabe Davis, but we touched on a couple of other things. But the idea that Gabe Davis would go from being barely wide receiver 36 with a 4-touchdown game to being a top 12 wide receiver because of Josh Allen and Magic, that's not actually upside. Like that's false upside. That is
Christian Watson has a higher upside than
Justin Jefferson.
this
Yeah,
year.
it's the fool's gold.
Theoretically,
like and it's the same thing. And Peter, I don't want to denigrate anybody, and certainly not a former employer of yours, but the idea that talent is somehow tied 1-for-1 with athleticism is snake oil. It's snake oil.
It's just not true.
Seeing these charts and saying, okay, because Corey Coleman scores similarly to Odell Beckham, that makes Corey Coleman Odell Beckham, is snake oil, and that's not actual upside. And so, like, depending on where people are failing, you can learn from that. And yes, you should play for upside. Consistency is a fallacy, and upside is a good thing to have. But understanding where people are misrepresenting or misinterpreting or misunderstanding that is valuable.
You got to stop asking good questions, Joe, because it's late and I'm tired. But I want to engage with this one a lot. What I would add to what Zach said, that it's related is unknown. How it is related is unknown.
Yeah,
is what I would say. Like, I'm not going to disband the idea because it makes sense. Here's what I'll do. I'll use a recent example. David Bell and that group of wide receivers that are just always in the right place but then don't pay off, that might be where it's coming out. Like players who play a certain way because they're just good at the game, but then can't compete at the next level because being good, you can't get in the places they may know they need to be in because they don't. There could be relationships there that we can't manage. It's like BMI to success. There's probably a relationship. There are some relationship. Most things have relationships to other things, but we are definitely not measuring something that can help us predict or explain it. I think that's where I come out on it. It's like it's just useless to consider what we've got right now because it's not good. But I think what you're saying, and that itself speaks to what I said before. It's finding out what you can reasonably know and what you can't reasonably have expectation of getting right. And that's one of the things I've increasingly focused on. Again, it's like athleticism. Yeah, I would say it probably matters. Nothing we're doing right now is helping us explain it.
Right.
None of BMI doesn't, high adjusted speed score doesn't really, even if we can argue tight end, we don't know the relationship, the interplay between how you play and the position you play and the team situation you're in and your athleticism. That's you've got a whole reality in there, and mathematical models, the most advanced, can't literally predict the future. And that's the level of variables we're talking about to describe that relationship. There isn't an easy shortcut here. So you just know that you can't reasonably assume that a player is bad because of it. And then you play the value, you play the ADP, you play whatever else. That's where I'd go with it. The other thing I'd say is if it's purely chance, value is all that matters, which is probably why Adam Harstad leans towards ADP and playing value. Because he does think that a lot more of it is chance than I believe. I know that the fantasy douche, who was kind of gone before I really arrived on the scene, because I'm sad and not a real OG, I guess. Someone once quoted him to me saying that he used to say that the difference between talent at the NFL level is exaggerated. I like that because it teaches the right lesson, but I also think it's slightly incorrect. I think there are player differences and we do see them bear out and we can still separate them out. But again, understanding how much we can separate it out and identify it successfully to a high enough degree, that's the part that's not chance. Just understanding what we can do that to and what we can't do that to, that's where we can play. If it was purely chance, all that would matter is it's a dice roll at that point if it's purely chance. So betting $100 on 6 and $100 on 4 is probabilistically the exact same bet. So if someone's giving you 2-1 on one number and 1-1 on another number, you may as well just always place it on that 2-1 bet or whatever. I don't actually bet, so I don't know which statistic is better payout, but you get what I mean. The fact that it's not means that there's work we can do to increase our chances, which is where learning from your mistakes, finding out what you can actually get better at or have a reasonable expectation to do better than chance. And that's it. That's a whole game for me. Sorry, stop asking good questions. Come on. It's pretty luck-based. It is also highly variance, because even in those small aspects that we can, reality can literally just disagree. Julio Jones can literally just have the year of his life because he's an amazing football player and just plays out of his skin. Situations can break right. People can beat expectations. People can Josh Allen where they do the thing that very, very rarely gets done. There are those 20% of breakout, 27% of breakouts. Maybe Sky Moore does it. Doesn't mean I don't know the right odds. Know the odds you're betting on, then make your bets appropriately. I'm not dropping Sky Moore or David Bell or John Talbot, to that matter, because it rarely happens. But for free, man, it's a value investment at that point. So there's not just luck, or well, luck and variance is probably the same term here, but I think there's two aspects going into it. There's the fact there's a lot we can't honestly have reasonable expectations of knowing because reality, and there's a small amount that we can, but you're still going to get some things wrong. The issue is I'm a sucker in the league that loves Richardson.
Yeah, so that makes him harder to trade and get the. But you could win big. That's fine.
Fantasy football is meant to be a game for fun. So you're meant to love players and just want to roster them. I mean, yeah, go for it. I wouldn't encourage anything more. You should do that. If Richardson starts, how many games does he play and do poorly before he's declared a bust? Interesting question. I honestly think if they play him, they expect him to be good. From memory, like they literally run it all the way to the end of the season. It's like week 10 and they're like, oh, there was a slight injury, and then he never makes his way back to the field for some reason. I think if he plays, he'll play the majority of the season. Or they'll bring him in at the end, like Mahomes got to play that one game before the end of the season. Not that Mahomes doesn't mean expect. Anyway. San Diego. It was San Diego. There you go, Zach. You're right. Mr. Scampers, I don't have many questions because I'm in so few leagues. That's fine. But I wish I was in less already. But listen, anyway, for the dulcet tones and obligatory...
Deluge. That's how you pronounce dulcich.
Or dulcich. Stick around. There'll be worse. Worse pronunciations. Always listen. I appreciate it. I'm still on the Olave greater than Tyreek Sell. Value-wise, sure. He's not going to outproduce him. Again, I don't know, there's only some things. Anything can happen, but that's where I don't think so. If he does, I'm just wrong. That's fine. Seems like a popular scenario this summer. I think in Dynasty, you stick to the U side in the vacuum of what is a Dynasty trade. We did the Rate My League in the second league. It was really cool. Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed it. We're starting to get some feedback on some of the episodes we've done. They're really fun. So far, it's been positive. So, name a team with the least fantasy relevant players. I'll go first. Carolina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the only other two that I can think that would come, or three, I guess, Houston, Arizona, because Murray's injured.
Yeah.
And then like, I'm still not sold on Tampa being good with Baker. Like,
yeah.
Baker
Carolina,
ruined.
Houston.
Do you know how bad a quarterback you have to be to ruin Jarvis Landry?
You will never forget.
Oh. And I called it. Do you remember that when I like the canary in the coal mine, Jarvis Landry with Baker? Oh,
Genji, good point. Week 1 was fun with the Gabe Davis victory laps. Sometimes I feel like it's that Buddhist monk tale they tell in Charlie Wilson's War. It's just keep saying we'll see, and eventually everyone gets to be right and wrong. So, Peter, when are we getting 2 streams a week? I don't know, man. As soon as I don't have to work, as soon as I don't have a regular full-time job, probably. Right now, I can't fit any more hours. I don't have this hour free right now. I'm meant to be making my podcast. I know you're talking about Zach. Yeah.
Me too, Joe. I knew you did.
Analytics don't have eyelashes. Can't trust them. AI analytics don't have eyelashes. Also, they're not AI. I mean, I'm not to be a definition truther, but if you're going to call something artificial intelligence and it's not intelligence, then it's just a branding move. And I hate you because I've been waiting for that my whole damn watching sci-fi life. It's a predictive text box, a really advanced, really interesting technology advancement. Don't get me wrong. There's tons of work that's gone into it, but it's not actually AI, and I just feel bitter about that. It's a branding name. Great answers, guys. I'm trying my best, Joe.
Fantastic questions. I mean, that helps.
Yeah, too good. I feel like she wrote those in advance.
We'll take it.
Prepared. Look, it's variants, basically. Yeah, I think that I'm getting tired. That's basically the same thing. I love Richardson too. Everyone's got to love someone, man. It's not a fun world. I drafted Madison late in my Dynasty startup. Oh, well, that's paying off last year. And it's currently my running back 3. Really solid behind Pollard and Mixon. My team's contending, but I don't know if I want to keep Madison or look. If you want to trade him, I think he's just going to do better off trading him in season. I think there's going to be a window. He's got the job. He's actually a fairly good running back. But with running backs, we mostly judge by volume. But I mean, the tape evaluators have told me consistently over his career he's a lot better than people think.
I hear Jake liked Madison.
Jake's one of them. He was always high on the backup behind Cook. For which I got to laugh because he never got the job. Get you so. Thanks for the show, guys. Love it as always. Thank you, Tim.
Appreciate
Thanks for chiming in too. Got a value bump just for existing.
Yeah, the Madison.
He is a player in the NFL. Let's give him some value. Zach, on the Landry point, would you say historically high target share earners that can't produce is really bad for quarterback value and not that necessarily?
I think as a general rule, high target earners produce with serviceable. I mean, like Jarvis Landry did it with Tannehill, and Tannehill was the definition of average. Like I don't think it's a bad thing to have an average quarterback. I just think Mayfield was fairly obviously below. Like to me, was fairly obviously below average, and everybody ran him out to like the nth degree. Like people had him as QB3 after 6 games, but
I don't believe in narratives and never listen to them, obviously, but I love the walk-on stories. They kind of get me every time. Walked on in a college and then get to the NFL. I'm like, yeah, let's go. But it never works out. Joanna, then. Yeah, gotcha. Mr. Scampers, I wholeheartedly with the branding take Peter. Okay. Minnesota could add a veteran.
I mean, Dalvin may end up back there. Who knows? But
yeah.
All right, Pete.
Someone's banging on the wall at this point. I think a dog's scratching. I mean, if a player like Landry didn't produce, it speaks more about the QB.
And that's what I said. Like, if you look at, and even his catch percentage, like you just went down and looked, and all of a sudden, like he went from catching 75, 80% of the balls to catching 55% of the balls. And I'm like, that's not on Jarvis. Jarvis is the canary in the coal mine. But
I'm not taking this L.
Yeah,
Baker can have it.
That's it. All right, Pete. Look over
Appreciate
there.
It,